everyone. I'm noting the presence of a quorum, so I am now going to call the Acton-Boxborough Regional School Committee to order. I'd like to welcome everyone here this evening. Thanks for coming out to share your evening with us, especially members of the public. We have a full agenda tonight, so I'm going to move right to public participation, but I do want to mention that ActonTV is taping us tonight, and there's a live broadcast of this meeting. So at this time, I invite members of the public to speak on items not included on tonight's agenda. And please note that we have added an new item 12 to the agenda that addresses the ballot question. So if you're here to speak on the ballot questions, we ask you to wait until that item 12 comes up during the business meeting.
John Peterson, 6 Jackson Drive, Acton. Next week, an election will be held, and voters will support some candidates in their positions more than others. But when we look at the results, few minorities will be less than 30%. Many minorities will exceed 40%, and some minorities will be within just a few votes of the majority position. However, the majority will determine the outcome because that is our process, and each of us should accept that outcome, even if we work to change the process in the future. Tonight, the school committee will vote on a variety of issues. The burden on the school committee members is greater than the burden on individual voters, as thousands of citizens in Acton and Boxborough have elected school committee members to represent us. The question of what makes a good representative has been asked many times. Often people respond with the words of Edmund Burke from 1774, who in speaking of elected representatives said, and apologies, it was 1774, pronouns weren't really an issue at that time. But his unbiased opinion, his mature judgment, his enlightened conscience, he ought not to sacrifice to you, to any man, or to any set of men living. Your representative owes you not his industry only, but his judgment, and he betrays instead of serving you if he sacrifices it to your opinion. Tonight, I will be listening as school committee members voice their opinions, and per Burke, I do not expect them to align their opinions with the audience. I do expect their opinions to be a result of their careful study of the issues and their mature judgments. If this is the case, I will be completely satisfied. The outcome of the votes will be whatever it will be. My role will then be to accept the outcome and move forward. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Hey, when you come up, please state your name and the town that you're from.
Hi, Jeff Fishman in Prospect Street, Acton, and I have children at the Miriam schools. Thank you for your time. What I wanted to talk to you about was we're living in a world, unfortunately, of hate today, where people are doing evil things to each other. We're all aware of it. Yesterday there was needles and candy in Marshfield. There's been mass shootings there, I said it. We've done a great job, you guys have done a great job in locking school buildings, but the administration building is left unlocked. Hundreds of kids, including mine, go to the administration building every single day. Pre-K, before and after school care from all the schools in Acton. I believe there's even a high school or something like that in that building as well. There's a door with a code lock that's unlocked in the afternoons, and then the front door is just left unlocked. I think this is beyond unacceptable. God forbid something happens in that building to one of our kids, we're all going to regret it. I beg you to please figure out a policy, a plan. So I believe you sit in that building too, if I'm not mistaken. Those doors should never be unlocked. So thank you for your time. I hope you'll consider this, take this as a serious matter.
Thank you.
Can I just respond to that one? Sure. So, Jeff, first, thank you. I appreciate the comments. Just on a technical correction, our doors are actually locked all day except at dismissal and entry times because parents walk their kids into classrooms. But other than that, actually, they are locked.
So you're saying they're unlocked
like during the time early childhood is in session, those doors are locked.
So, but it drop off and pick up. I thought they unlocked the door, the padlock, the code. I thought that was unlocked from about 2 o'clock on.
It is because parents are coming and going to pick up children, but I'm happy to talk to you more about it if you'd like.
That's a 4-hour window that the building's left wide open in the afternoon. That's a mistake.
Okay, thank you.
We now move to item 4 on the agenda. We have our high school student rep here with us to update us on what's happening at the high school. Thank you.
Thanks. So I'm Michael. We've basically run through all three of us, so you're just going to be seeing us rotating. We have a sort of packed house, so I'm just going to try to keep this quick. But first, I think Mr. Blight was thinking along the same lines. I'd just like to, I was trying to spend 15 minutes before here trying to figure out the right word. I'm not sure condemn, acknowledge, etc., but note none of the above. The acts of hate, both nationally, locally, things around that. I'd just like to note that there was a statement read to all students at the high school by Principal Dory on Tuesday. There were discussions during all lunch periods that were voluntary in the counseling center today for students who would like to discuss those issues regarding acts of hate, etc. And I just wanted to take a moment to note that. Moving on, today I think it's a really big day for seniors. It's their early action, I have to get this right, Arnav. It's the early action deadline for college applications, so a lot of seniors are being sort of stressed out about that. It's a really sort of a big deal for them. And for the rest of us, it's also the end of the term is next Monday, which means just naturally the way it goes, a lot of exams, tests, stuff like that. And earlier this week would actually have been the last day for schedule changes, which basically makes a lot of students, if you want to maybe make sure this is the right class for you, the right level, things like that, last week would have been the last day, or this Monday would have been the last day before you would have had to have that reflected on your report card. So there was a lot of decision making by students around that. And then next week we have sort of a funky schedule with Diwali being a homework-free day. We have the election, and then we have homework-free with the Veterans Day. I think it's Veterans Day next Monday, or next Monday now. So that just sort of shakes out to be sort of a busy time on Monday and Friday before that. Moving on to extracurriculars, Proscenium Circus is currently in session with the Hunchback of Notre Dame. I have to pronounce that French, right? But I believe they're still having shows. They opened last weekend. I believe they're still having shows this weekend, the 2nd and the 3rd. Or, yes. And on sports, just checking Twitter, I believe that all of our teams, the fall sports, all made the playoffs, which is just a great achievement. Yeah, round of applause. And I'll just leave that at that. Thank you.
I just want to say I really appreciate the updates that we get each week from the high school kids. So thank you for taking your time to come and do that.
Thank you, Michael. We have a warrant. I'm going to read the warrant now. We have 2 vendor warrants. Actually, there's 3 now. So 19-009PR, 19-009SH, those are student activities, and 19-009 in the total amount of $3,323,730.27, and a payroll warrant P1908 in the amount of $2,505,583.64. We also have minutes to approve tonight. In your packet, you will find the minutes from the October 18th meeting. Do I hear a motion to approve? A second? Mary? Any changes anyone wants to make to the minutes? Okay. All in favor of approving these minutes? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you.
All right, so good evening, everyone. I want to just take a moment. I know this was in your packet, but I wanted to read this because I think hopefully it also leads us into a little bit of the next presentation around the seed training we have. But I think I reflected a little bit over the last week or so in the news, and I think it's been a very challenging one to watch in the media. And we've seen extensive news coverage, both locally and nationally, around several incidents of bias as well as extreme and violent acts of hate. One such incident resulted in the tragic deaths of 2 African Americans shot after the suspect attempted to first gain access to a locked church. We also watched media coverage unfold as pipe bombs were mailed to various national figures by someone espousing hate-filled messages on social media. We then watched the coverage of the horrific massacre in the Pennsylvania synagogue by a man shouting anti-Semitic slurs. At the local level, one of our own elementary students was subject to hateful speech when a man told him that his dog had rights as an American and that if the student didn't like it, he could go back where he came from. Hate is not partisan. Hate is simply hate. We don't tolerate hate here in our schools. This is an important message for our students to hear and understand. If students confuse political rhetoric and hate, they misunderstand the rich historical political debate that has shaped our nation for generations. As a school district, we have a unique responsibility to make sure students understand this distinction because as citizens, they will need to engage in civil discourse around important issues with those who may have different beliefs. It's important to recognize that in the media-rich environment of today's world, and regardless of how we try to insulate our children from these horrific acts, our children are indeed listening. They watch and listen to the media, to their peers, and to our reactions to these incidents. According to a study published actually just 2 days ago by the American Psychological Association, the current generation of teens, ages 15 to 21, and now we are on Generation Z, are reporting higher levels of stress than previous generations. The study attributes this based on a survey that they conducted in which students responded that the major issues influencing this were increased gun violence and other recent political issues that have been widely covered in the media. We cannot lose the opportunity to speak out against bias and hate in all of its forms. Our words and actions, or conversely our silence, send incredible messages to those listening. Our nation was founded on some basic principles of equality laid out in our Declaration of Independence. While far from perfect and ever evolving through interpretation, the core values articulated by the founders still apply today, that all men, and I added women and persons, are created equal and are endowed with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. All students are our students, and all families are our families. Regardless of the color of your skin, your religion, your gender, gender identity, or sexual orientation, independent of your place of birth, your ancestry, economic status, or political beliefs, and whether or not you have a disability or any differentiating characteristic, you are one of us, and we are here for you. I want to take this opportunity to reiterate on behalf of all of our district leaders, faculty, and staff throughout the district that we will not tolerate, accept, condone, or be silent with regard to bias and hate. Our students deserve to be loved and valued as unique individuals and for the families from which they come, and ultimately to feel safe and supported by the school they attend each day. To those members of our community who have been impacted either directly or indirectly by these or other incidents of hate or bias, please know that the AB schools stand with you. We remain committed to fostering an inclusive environment for all members of our community. And then I have a note in here, if you are interested in doing more, whether it's anyone here or on our school committee, there is a training coming up, and I erroneously had it sponsored by Fostering Racial Justice Group. It's actually sponsored by the UCC in Boxborough, and it is this Sunday, November 4th, and information is listed in the superintendent's update, but it's a training for active bystanders so that we can enable all of our community members to better understand what they can do if they see evidence of hate or bias. So thank you very much, and with that, I will pass the mic back.
Thank you. I think we all need to hear those words right now, at this time, especially. So item number 6 is a presentation called Seeking Educational Equity and Diversity. So I'm just going to remind members that SEED, as we call it, is one of the strategic items in our long-range strategic plan and the district goals. It's under Goal 2, our equity goal. It's an initiative coordinated by Deb Bookus' office. She's the assistant superintendent, for those of you who don't know, teaching and learning. Our district goal is by August of 2019 to have 9 Acton-Boxborough teachers who have completed the SEED Train the Trainer program so that they can return here to Acton-Boxborough and hold workshops for our teachers and staff. And the goal for that is to have 10% of certified staff here in AB complete a SEED workshop by August 2019. So what is the National SEED Project? So we have invited 2 two teachers here to walk us through and introduce us to SEED.
Thanks. Hi, good evening. I'm Deborah Bookus. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning. And back in the spring of 2017, Val Glaude and Maureen Lynn, two of our junior high educators whom you'll meet in just a minute, asked me to meet with them to discuss SEED training. I had no idea what a SEED training was, but within just a few minutes of hearing about SEED, fully supported. They're attending a workshop to become SEED trainers. It's so perfectly aligned with our district values around wellness and equity and engagement, and continuing to create a culture that was caring and inclusive, in which all of our members, our staff, our students can continue to learn and to thrive together. And so I'm really happy this evening to introduce to you Val Glaude, who is a special education teacher at the junior high. She also formerly taught social studies here at the junior high. And Maureen Lynn, who is a special education teacher here at the junior high school and formerly taught English here at the junior high. So welcome, Maureen and Val.
Can everybody hear me? I was having some trouble hearing some folks, so, okay. So what is SEED? First, we just wanted to give you a little bit of an overview how we learned about SEED. Some folks at the junior high staff, not just teachers, but some assistants, administrators, were interested in having and encouraging deeper conversations about equitable opportunities at the junior high and in schools in our district. And so we formed a group, now sort of known as the Equity Initiative, 3 or 4 years ago. And we found a woman named Melody Brazo, who is the Welcoming Schools Coordinator for Cambridge Public Schools. And she also is a consultant for many districts in the state who wish to deepen their conversations around equity. So for about 1.5 years, she consulted with Andrew Shen, Maureen, myself, and other teachers who are part of this equity group at the junior high. And after about 1.5 years of helping us facilitate PD, she recommended that we look into SEED to sort of deepen our own train the trainer model. So indeed, Maureen and I pursued leadership training. And you'll notice that I try to stray away from the term training because it really isn't a class or a training in the same way that you would envision a diversity class. Maureen and I have played around with the term courageous conversations. So how can we become more skilled at having these courageous conversations around issues of equity? So what is SEED? SEED stands for Seeking Educational Equity and Diversity. It's a program out of Wellesley College, Wellesley Center for Women. Peggy McIntosh, some of you may or may not have heard of her. She's a scholar, a feminist professor from Wellesley College, and co-founded this organization in 1987. And again, here's this term, conversational communities. So as opposed to having a set curriculum, which Maureen will touch upon a little bit later, the goal is to sort of drive first personal growth and change, then organizational, and finally systemic change towards greater equity and diversity. Maureen and I first participated in August 2017, this new Leaders Week, in which it was a large cohort, I think over 60 people, pre-K all the way through college level, administrators, community members, educators, counselors. Here's a picture of our cohort. This was at St. Mark's in Southborough. Yeah, where's Waldo? Maybe you can find us in the middle there. It was a really fabulous opportunity because we were able to experience a lot of the activities that we would then be delivering to the participants in our seminars. Let's see, I think you're up.
So now that we're back from New Leaders Training, we've been running seminars for administrators and teachers and other staff members in the district. And the goals of our seminars are to develop the ability to listen more effectively to the experiences of others in order to build our cultural awareness and sensitivity, to establish a shared vocabulary and foundation of knowledge pertaining to systems of oppression, power, and privilege, to recognize how one's own experiences in schooling about diversity is a prelude to creating more equitable educational environments,
and to consider the ways in which each of us has the agency to affect change in our individual roles as leaders in the district. SEED is not a class with a set curriculum. They did not hand us a binder with lesson plans. Seminars are created with the needs and interests of the group in mind, and no two are ever the same. This visual is from SEED, and they call it segments of self-knowledge. So we all have areas, skills, and facts that we know we know. We all have areas that we know we don't know. But the vast majority are things that we don't even know we don't know. And the goal of SEED is really to raise awareness of those things that we don't know or understand yet, and to minimize them.
So since we didn't leave with the curriculum, we thought we might show you what we did leave with, which was this template. So it's the expectation that each seminar that we plan incorporates each one of these concepts. And so we wanted to explain to you what they are. Something that's fabulous is, you know, as I mentioned, there were community members, administrators, counselors, teachers a part of this training. All of us can use these in our, what we're calling courageous conversations, including teachers can then bring these concepts back to the classroom and differentiate and scaffold them to a level that would meet, you know, their students or their staff, whomever it is that they're now trying to implement these concepts with. So the first one, experiential learning, is we are the textbooks of our seminars. So the stories that we carry with us, the stories that we learn from others, are how we sort of investigate all of the stories that we bring is core to what SEED is. So learning from lived experiences, believing lived experiences, and seeking out lived experiences, and how do we hear these lived experiences sort of ties into the next concept, which is serial testimony. It's really important in SEED that the way we share and hear each other's stories is equitable. So the amount of time that we have to both speak and listen is pretty structured, and that's what serial testimony is. I don't know how many folks are familiar with protocols, but essentially that's what this is. This is a very structured protocol to make sure that the ways in which we're learning are also equitable.
We also strive to make sure that we have windows and mirrors in each session, making sure that people have the opportunity to see their own experiences reflected and validated, but also to have the opportunity to view as through a window the experiences of other people. Shelves and Selves says that we strive to consider how wider social and academic ideas balance with our own experiences and ideas. I've also had to think about Shelves and Selves in terms of the participants in our groups. We are not a very diverse group as a staff, and so I've had to use resources from the shelf to ensure, you know, texts and video clips to ensure that we are bringing in the voices of people of color and other groups that are underrepresented among our staff. So the next two concepts also tie in to get in with each other, I think. The notion of systemic analysis is first growing our own awareness of systems of oppression, what that means, how some of us have more power and others have less, and the next part is positional differentiation based on these aspects of our identities in which some of us have more and less power, understanding how that shapes our interactions with others in the world around us. So Maureen and I sometimes call this positionality. Poet and scholar Adrienne Rich calls this politics of location, understanding who you are, what you bring with you when you engage in another person, and how that could be very different, whatever you're talking about and what you bring to the table, depending on who you are. And finally, we try to end each session with enactable possibilities. So what are some actionable things that you can take back to your lives and your practice? Our seminars have included administrators, teachers, librarians, nurses, counselors, and a classroom assistant. Participants have been required to complete a final product. They create something that didn't exist before, or they write an action plan for a change or a policy that they would like to change. Some examples of of projects that have been completed. We had 2 nurses last year in our junior high group. They turned around and did a training for the whole nursing department, kind of summarizing some of our SEED concepts, but also pulling out those pieces that were really relevant to the nursing practice. We've had people make their professional practice goals make SEED work part of their professional practice goals, and we've also had a lot of teachers work on curriculum, so adding lesson plans or simply bringing in more resources to reflect other voices.
So this ties back to what Diane was starting kind of before Deb introduced us. So these long-term district goals, we had the opportunity to, I'm not going to reiterate the same things that she just said, but to teach, I think, 20 participants in the R.J. Gray SEED cohort. And Maureen is currently teaching another SEED group with Martha Sheridan from Miriam. And we also have Beth Baker and Maureen Lynn, who are teaching the district leadership team, another SEED seminar, and have plans for spring and summer sessions as well. It's our hope that we'll grow the body of leaders this summer, and also grow the amount of certified staff who are SEED empowered. Yeah, questions? I don't know if that's appropriate. Yeah, if anybody has any questions.
Just real quickly, first of all, thank you both for all your leadership in this powerful, powerful work. You have trained 80 people, 80 certified staff at Acton Boxborough out of about 480. So we're already at 16, 17%. By next month, you'll be done with that. And we have another group, 2 more groups, the spring and then the summer. So thank you and congratulations.
Yeah, thank you for supporting it.
So I just also want to mention that Dan Goldner at the high school is also one of the trainers who attended a training this past summer. So we have Dan and Beth will be running the spring workshop for the staff this spring. And then we'll be sending a few more folks this summer, so building that capacity for trainers.
Mary.
So, sorry, you're not off the hook yet. First of all, I think this is fabulous. I think we could all use this. I think maybe later tonight we could use some of this because I'm like, oh yeah, this all relates. I do wonder, once the teachers get really trained in this, I wonder is there a student component or a way that you're bringing it into the classroom? Because wouldn't it be fabulous that we educate our students to be able to have these conversations as they move through the world?
Sure. I mean, I think there's a natural component where, they call it seed, and so we plant the seed and it grows and we hope it spreads. So I think naturally anyone who goes through a seminar brings it back to their work. We are always entertaining lots of ideas. I mean, I would love to eventually have some kind of student component at the junior high level, at the high school level. So we do have big dreams.
Can I jump in on that too? Just to finish that off, we also have started exploring a partnership with the Anti-Defamation League around their A World of Difference program, because it fits very, very nicely with the work that the adults are doing around SEED. The one unique feature of the World of Difference program is that it's actually peer-led. So just like the adult groups are peer-led, the World of Difference program trains groups of peer leaders to be able to have these same discussions with students. So that's something we've started discussions with at the district level. We're actually bringing in high school and junior high administrators in the coming weeks into a broader discussion about that.
SEED is designed, though, to work in sort of very diverse groups, so to have students in with teachers, in with community members. So those are all options someday.
Eileen.
Thank you for that wonderful presentation. I just have one quick question. Can you explain a little bit more? Because I cannot link the highlight, not the highlight, the bold sentence with whatever down there. So what means our student will have equitable opportunity and tools to learn. And down there, we're talking about the teacher gets the opportunity, or maybe they get training. So what that line means.
So it's the hope that with deeper experience, vocabulary, sensitivity, and compassion, that teachers will be able to provide and grow the equitable opportunities of their students, which is sort of the theory behind SEED. Practically, I think teachers, educators who go through SEED can actually take many of the concepts back to their classroom. Things like windows and mirrors. So whose books are you reading? You know, whose stories are you hearing and sharing? So it's as much for the students as it is for the teachers. That answers.
That helps a lot. But I know that is in the maybe just a design and learning period. Do we have any measurement for that? How do we, in the future, how do we consider it is equitable and tools, and it's the equitable opportunity and tools? That is something, it's really the key, I think, here. So we're just to talk about something, it might be or not, or everybody hope it will be really great. So what could be the measurement and what will be, so that I think you understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So I just want to point out that goal number 2, this is from the Long Range Strategic Plan. This is our district goal number 2. And if you look back on our district goals under goal number 2, we have quite a few other measurable goals and action items, strategic items that we're working on this year. So this is just in order to show where this kind of work fits in the plan. And so if you look to see, the goal is to increase, right now is to increase awareness and to increase people's understanding of it. So we've set that goal, and then going further, we'll be able to look to see how we want to deepen that work in the future.
Yeah, and so Eileen, just to finish off on that, so there were actually, the overall goal number 2 was our students will have equitable opportunities to learn. There were multiple strategic actions within that goal. We are providing this as an update as to one of those specific strategic actions, and that's just something that we talked about during the summer workshop of focusing a lot of our presentations around district goal updates. So really just one element within that broader goal.
Okay,
So
I
really
think I
quick before you
understand
leave, Valerie, you had my daughter in 8th grade, and back to school night, I was really blown away by a TED Talk that you mentioned, and I went home and watched, but it was called The Danger of a Single Story by Chimamanda Adichie. So powerful, and I'm wondering, it seems to just gel with this, and I'm wondering if this whole initiative kind of formed out of that approach that you took, and I'm sure the whole team was doing the same thing with The Danger of a Single Story, and if you could comment on that, that would be great.
Sure. So Danger of a Single Story is actually one of the 4 essential questions. I see Mr. Balescu in the back there for 8th grade social studies. So what are the dangers of a single story, which was born of Chimamanda Adichie's TED Talk, which actually Peter shared our first welcoming us back. And so certainly the core of our social studies curriculum in 8th grade and in 7th grade has very much to do with equity and justice, and so is as much social justice education, I think, as it is social studies, as it is history. But I think that there were many inspirations for the Equity Initiative, and we want conversations to happen everywhere, not just in social studies classrooms. And so that was something that was really important to us and Andrew when we started this. How can we grow this everywhere and not just, even though it's not just social studies teachers, but I think we do a pretty great job, so, or did. I'm now special.
Okay, thank you.
One final.
Oh, okay, yep.
Sorry. I just want to make sure I thank both of you because this has been incredible work, and as I've come into the district and interviewed a lot of people for entry processes and things like that, almost every person who's been through this training has said what an incredible impact this has had on how they think personally and professionally around working with whole range of our students, but also in their own personal lives. Just incredibly powerful, incredibly impactful, so thank you for all the leadership you've done to bring this to us.
We have a second presentation this evening. We've invited Erin Batez and Kate Murray here. Erin is the Director of ComEd, Community Education, and Kate Murray is the Director of the Extended Day Programming. And they're here to update us on the Community Ed's new role as administrator of all our elementary school before and after school programming. Prior to this change, for those of you who don't know, our elementary schools ran their before and after school programmings as like siloed programs. So this is the first year of implementation of the new model, and we welcome them here to present to us on that initiative.
Great. Yep. Thanks. Yep, this is normally a departmental presentation that I would do as part of the annual budget cycle. It's nice to have Kate as a wingman this year for the first time. And the timing, we're a little early on the community ed stuff to try to make it gel with what's happening after a couple of months under our belt with the expansion of extended day. So I always come to events like this knowing that different people interact with community ed in different ways. You may have a child who loves the basketball league, or a child who attends extended day, or you may just get the catalog in the mail and not really know much else about us. So I love to take the opportunity to talk about all the things we do at community ed that affect our budget, which is the real reason to be here tonight. And so you see there are many, many things that we do throughout the community, from the catalog and the classes and the activities that are in there, to the extended day programs that Kate's going to talk more about in more depth, our summer day program and vacation day programs, which are sort of like child care opportunities, extended day on no school days, and again, driver ed, which is just, and use of facilities. So it's a funny activity that community ed handles use of our school buildings outside of the school day, and that's not typical for what a community ed department would do. Who works for community ed? Again, this is another thing I don't know that everybody appreciates, and I like to bring back to this presentation each year. Besides the 6 folks who work in our office, community ed supports 5.5 full-time employees, or the equivalent thereof, of district custodians who are working in the building and helping support those facilities in which we run our programs. We contribute about $50,000 a year to the salaries of folks who work in central office and who help facilitate all the financial and budgetary things that we do. And then you see all the other people that you may interact with as part of, the school district that really come through community ed. I had a really great experience this week, and I understood what a kindergarten teacher might feel when a student they had is graduating from the high school. A young woman came to meet with me to fill out her paperwork to become a lifeguard, and I can picture her mother first in line for swimming lessons when I started 10 years ago. So that was really a lovely moment, and I like the connections we have, and was real proud of the way we taught her to swim, and now she's going to be our employee. The bottom line is community ed is doing very well. We provide terrific programming that people respond to. We try to bring new and exciting and profitable things to the district all the time. And as a result, we have a healthy financial situation that produces a surplus that we are then able to give back to the district each year in many, many ways. Last year was kind of a high point of all the time that I've been at community ed. We contributed over $900,000 in personnel, items, in-kind donations. The highlights, the big things I've highlighted there. We love to do things like this, and already I know the folks in leadership are thinking of other ways that community ed's revenues can go right back to supporting the facilities and the people and the things that we do here. Some highlights. These might not seem like highlights, but last year was a really interesting year as we planned for a lot of evolution. Again, the work that Kate did and Marie was invaluable in helping us think through all the implications of bringing all of those extended day programs together. I would also say the principals of the schools who were affected, Dana Lab, Chris Whitbeck, and Ed Kaufman, were tremendous in partnering with us and solving, working through situations that were going to be interesting. Our summer day program has been tearing up the administration building for years, and we moved over here to the junior high this summer, which was tough on the people who work in the program and tough on the people who work in this building in the summer. So again, that was a collaborative and good effort that resulted in a terrific move across the street. And we also, a highlight was that Bernadette Keegan, who runs the summer day program, was always getting asked by parents, why can't you do something at the end of August? We have just historically left the buildings at the end of August or mid-August so that they can be cleaned and readied for the new school year. But families who love our programs then felt like they didn't have a good option for things to do. So Bernadette creatively, with almost no space to speak of, has been kind of creating new programs to solve this need and added 2 more weeks of programming at the end of August for families last year. So that really responded to a demonstrated need, and people were thrilled about it. And, you know, a lot of them said they'd already made plans, so this year I'm expecting it to be that much larger because people know about it now. So that was a real quick and dirty about community ed. I do want to turn it over to Kate Murray, who's going to talk about extended day in detail, and then we can answer any questions either of us at the end. Thanks.
Hi, thank you. You have to forgive me, this is my first time making a presentation with needing to wear glasses, so I can't see here and I can see there, so I'm going to be flipping around a lot. As everyone knows, we have transitioned to having community ed kind of oversee all 6 extended day programs in the district, which was, as Erin mentioned, a huge undertaking. I know Marie was out of the room when she said that Marie Altieri was a huge support for us while we did this, a lot of planning, and then through the summer. So we have a house here now, so we have all 6 programs underneath community ed. We have a tremendous amount of staff leader continuity with all of these programs. They've been here for many, many years, which I think they are the faces of extended day to the families, and those did not change, which I think gave us a lot of strength going forward. By combining all 6 programs, the district was able to ensure that every single classroom has assistance support, which we're very, very proud of, and this initiative really led us to be able to do that. All the work on the school committee and everyone else for moving forward with this, I think, is a great asset to our classrooms and our students. So here's the current enrollment. As you can see, it's relatively steady. Some of the fluctuations could be because of the new one-tier busing. That we have a lot of enrollment now in the morning because it's kind of considered in the elementary school a later start. So we have children over at Douglas who are having French toast sticks and bacon and really enjoying themselves over in the morning because they have a lot more time. As I said, it's relatively the same enrollment. You know, it's down a little bit. If you see the blip down at admin, that could be due to the Parker Damon program being open. So children who could attend either one are staying at Parker Damon. The Parker Damon program, as you can see, has gone up. So there are minor fluctuations, but overall relatively very steady. This will be our baseline going forward to see how this year will compare to years going forward. I do want to mention that this number, 636, is basically 1/4 of all of our elementary school students are in attendance in extended day. And that could be morning and afternoon, or just 1 day a week, or even just a drop-in. But that's a pretty significant number. I haven't used my glasses yet. It's pretty good. So accomplishments to date, this is kind of the meat of a lot of the things that we've done. I'm not going to bore you with many of the details, which I can definitely go into if people have more questions. For the financial alignment across the programs, we're now all offering, every single program offers an online payment option. We collectively at Community Ed, we take deposits. And payroll is now all centralized in one place. Checks are all written to Acton-Boxborough Community Ed, so it's very centralized. Salaries are all aligned. Everyone that works for us, we're on a new salary scale, so it's comparable, each program from one to the other, which is really great, and that will be the model to use going forward. We have over 70 paid staff. That includes our 6 staff leaders that I mentioned, 4 head teachers. We have 45 assistant teachers. We have over 16 paid high school aides, and then we do have about 5 or 6 high school volunteers. So we're a very vibrant employment opportunity, which is great, and a lot of the people that we employ have even been around for a long time. It's a mixture. Some work in the school district and then work for us after school. Some have been stay-at-home parents for a long time and want to come back to work. So it's a real mixture, but it's really the strength of our program. I've heard parents really talk about the staff that we have is why they have their kids here at Extended Day. A big part of the staff for me on my end is that we now have a shared
group of subs that all 6 programs can utilize and tap into, which has been used a lot. And we can really look at what staff works better at different programs. I've had a staff member recently, she worked over at Douglas, and she just fits better over here with the students and the age group that we have. So it was very easy for me to move that person over here, and then we move someone else into Douglas. So it was really a win-win for everybody in that situation, and I, obviously if we didn't have Douglas with us, underneath us, I wouldn't have been able to make that connection, so that was great. For professional development and training, I just wanted to mention that we did do professional development as a group with all 6 programs at the beginning of the school year, and we'll have another professional development opportunity for all the staff coming up next Tuesday. We've also done some significant training for those who weren't trained in the other programs. They include our safety care, which is our restraint training. So now we have at all of the programs, staff are safety care trained. We had all of our staff, not all, but there's staff in each of the programs that are trained in Safe Serve, which is the food professional management program. They're certified in Safe Serve. They've done the online school training, the Safe Schools. They're CPR trained, and they also have gone to outside training at our NEDS program, which is kind of a extended day directors. They offer a professional development, and many of our staff have gone to that. So these trainings were not necessarily offered or required in some of the other programs, and now since we've all kind of been aligned under one program, now all of the staff are required for most of these trainings. So that's been a huge opportunity for them. The programming, we've offered field trips. Parker Damon went on its first field trip it's ever been on last week. They went apple picking, so they were excited about that. There are mini classes that I've offered in my programs in years prior that now we're able to kind of offer across programs. One great example of this is a high school assistant who just loves to do science experiments and STEM work with elementary school children, which is quite a feat. She made little huts the other day, and she had them designed from anything that they could find outside, and these are 2nd and 3rd graders, and they had to keep the snow out, and the snow was salt, grains of salt. So it was very, very difficult. The kids were very, very motivated to keep their huts salt and snow free. It was really great to see, and so she comes over here once a week to teach the STEM class to the kids here at admin, and she's going to rotate around all 6 programs and do a 6-week STEM program. And that's just one example how we're able to use someone that that teaches at the high school to come over to our program. So there's just a lot of marriage between staff, and then we know that they obviously share the same goals that we have because they're in our school district already. So that's great. A lot of the mini classes that I offered will be shared again throughout all 6 programs, but we're also looking at what's really unique to each school. Some of them have had programs running there that we're able to kind of keep there, so it's a little bit of a mixture of both. In terms of administration, under this bullet, we have a new process for communicating with parents, which is bright arrow on Power School, which many of you know. So we have more communications and richer communications with parents, which is great. Our new website has been much more accessible to the families in our program, and they can access, we put our calendars up there, we put newsletters, so I think parents have been very happy about that. We have a different staff form that everybody uses, so much more centralized systems that we now are able to do. We have a centralized ordering system, and it brings us to be able to have much more control over inventory, which has been very interesting for me to study kind of how much programs used to spend and then kind of what things are going to look like this year. So we have 2 big items on our to-do list this year. The first one is to really determine how we can best support our families who are in need or economically disadvantaged. We have always historically offered scholarships differently. So Community Ed has offered state vouchers through the 3 programs that I was managing before we all folded into one. And then there have been kind of in-house scholarships that have been offered at the other 3 schools. So this year what we're really doing is we're really taking a look at which is the most feasible way to do it that we're going to do kind of going forward. So that's a big project of mine this year to really figure out, does it make more sense to kind of do an in-house scholarship program across all 6 programs? and not use the voucher system, or should we continue on with the voucher system and expand that to be in all 6 of our programs? So that's something that we're looking at and doing a lot of analysis on. The second one has to do with flexible scheduling and whether or not our extended day program is really able to provide more opportunities for 1-hour drop-ins, or can I just come for a month? The way that we used to do it at Community Ed, it was we were able to offer drop-ins, but not similar to 1 hour, and can I come for a half an hour, and that kind of flexible pricing. So we're really looking into what the cost of that would be, what the staffing would require for us to move towards that, or how we can kind of incorporate that so there's some kind of happy medium and balance that with what our budget requirements are. So those are my 2 big lists, in addition to kind of keeping everything running this year. But so far, it's been relatively smooth, and we're very excited that we're able to do it. So I appreciate all of your support, and we're open to any questions.
Mary.
Not a question, but a comment. I think it seems that you've taken something that was pretty scary for families. You know, we get really attached to the schools and the programs that our kids are in, and it sounds like you've done a lovely job of really recognizing the value of each program and then bringing enrichment to that through what can be offered as one whole community. So thank you.
Paul.
So I've known ComEd for a long time, but I was interested to see you have the slide up there that talks about professional development. I'm wondering, you said right there, yeah. And I'm wondering, so you were giving us the anecdote of the salt and snow. Is that an example of professional development, or is that more one of the programs that you offer?
So the professional development, I was just mentioning that now the professional development that I've been running, any kind of trainings that I've been doing, we've been doing with all 6 programs. So they're just larger and more information gathering, and I think all of the staff that have now come together have really benefited from kind of all being in a room together and talk about best practices. So it's been very enriching. The snow example was under the programming, where I used a high school teacher to come in, and she's going to be doing the rotation of the 6-week STEM program.
Angie.
Yeah, I want to thank you that I remember those extended days.
The good old days, right?
Good old days. Snow day, is the extended day offer the coverage?
Yeah, so great question. It was on my notes and I didn't get to it, so I appreciate that. Yeah, so we still do offer the holiday programs. Bernadette Keegan is the one who's doing the summer programs and the holiday programs. The no school day next week she'll offer Veterans Day. We haven't quite gotten to offering a snow day yet. It's something we can definitely look at this year. I do know a lot. Oh, sorry.
And the only reason I'm going to pop in is I think
probably
when
don't know yet.
schools are closed because it's unsafe for staff and buses,
right.
we wouldn't open extended day on those days.
Right. But any other days that we don't offer something that there hasn't been enough enrollment are things we can continually look at to be open.
On the last slide, that the state voucher system for that one, and with the trending, you know, the need for is there like a percentage in trending up, trending down, or is there like do you see the demand going up?
I think this year we're really going to take the time to look at that. That's really part of the process, is to really look at what the needs are. Are they going up or down? And then to really determine what the best choice of option would be. So we're working on that this year.
Thank you.
I just want to thank both of you because this has been an incredible undertaking. Just the amount of reorganization as we were talking through this the other day, you know, you just blew my mind with the level of professionalism you brought to this, how you were able to bring staffs from all of the different schools who had independent programs before and really culturally bring them all together under one umbrella, because that's that's a huge undertaking, so thank you for all that you've done on this. Thank you, Marie, as well, for all of the support you've given to that initiative. And, you know, please extend the thanks also to all the different staffs at the schools, because it's been turbulent, but people have really come along, and it's just turning out to be a great program, so thank you. From a school committee perspective, I just want to also, and you'll be sick of me saying this by the end of the year, but I want to draw your attention that there's a reason that we chose to present this. This is an update regarding our district goals for the year. It's specific to goal number 2, which is the same thing as you heard in the SEED program. This is another one of those elements. The first part of this was to update you regarding the changes that were enacted last year, which was part of our Monitoring Progress initiative. And then the second part was to look forward a little bit, as you heard about looking at the voucher system that aligns with really taking a hard look at how families have to contribute to students' education and how we can do that in the most affordable way. So really it is tied into that equity goal. I just want to make sure that's clear. And I just want to make sure you'll be sick of me saying all the goals and tying it to the strategic plan.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's actually very, very helpful as we assemble our portfolios and our populate our Google Docs with the information we need for the superintendent evaluation. Yeah, you right? Okay, I'm going to move right to item 9, financial update.
Thank you. Try and be like Kate and not have to use my glasses, but we'll see. In the materials you have the E&D balance roll forward that was approved by the Department of Revenue, along with the email of the certification of the amount. And so here's, you've seen this chart before. It's updated for the most current year. $4,082,000 of E&D. It's up slightly. I think last year was $4,008,000, so it's up just a slight tick from last year in dollars. It's down a slight tick in percent. To me, that's pretty flat, and the visual there shows a pretty steep upslope with a leveling off in this past year. The trend is clearly exemplary. I'm going to comment a bit later in the presentation about that, but I wanted to pass on several noteworthy items from this slide. That slope won't and can't continue to go up increasingly to the right because there's a cap that the state mandates that the district can't exceed 5%. So it's not a coincidence that we're leveling off in the high 4 percentiles. E&D, as I said, is relatively flat from fiscal 17 to fiscal 18. But that reflects a couple of things, and so consider that we are flat despite the fact that $710,000 was expended out of E&D to fund the elementary school feasibility study. $775,000 was used to offset the FY19 assessment, and that included $575,000 to specifically fund the initiative for single-tier busing. So it's a pretty simple slide, but this is probably our best foot forward. Again, I'm going to follow up in a related matter in a few minutes. But questions on this one? I'll ask on every slide if there are questions. You have also in your materials the revenue summary statement. Here are what I know to be the significant variances to this point in time. Chapter 70, we received, the final budget had $30 of minimum aid per student. We had budgeted $20. Transportation aid was increased in June of 2018 for fiscal 18, and this number, which is significantly over our budget, the budget, as you know, is developed in the December-January timeframe. So by the time June rolled around, the state had a significant increase in the reimbursement, and so that number has carried forward on the cherry sheet for FY19, and that's a significant source of additional revenue for the district in 19. And lastly, investment earnings. Historically, that has been budgeted at 0 for a couple of reasons.
primarily because the rate has been so puny that the earnings were fairly negligible. This is the first year that we have anything budgeted in the revenue, in revenue for the district. And again, at the time we developed the budget last year, 100,000 seemed like a reasonable target. It looks pretty light at this point. What I've done is extrapolated actual first quarter investment earnings throughout the end of the year. If rates continue to rise slightly, we may beat that number again. But I expect in all three of these cases, these should be pretty much expected to be carried forward through to year end. And so the variance we've identified to this point in the first quarter, 426,000, fairly consistent, I might add, with the last couple of years. I do expect you to get used to that number in my presentations for the next couple of quarters, and then perhaps a modification at the end of the year. Questions on revenues?
Mary.
It's not a question, but a comment. I'm thinking the 426,000, if we end up at that level, would push us over the E&D cap. Although I would remind folks, we have a transportation fund where we can put resources, and so it may be we can, because we can't spend this revenue because we didn't budget, right? Like if there's unspent funds that we budgeted, we can choose to spend those on other things. But new revenues, we can't spend. Is that right?
You can't exceed your budgeted, your appropriated expenditure. That's correct.
Right. So we're going to have to think about that. I mean, because, yeah, we'll have to think about that.
We've already, and by we, there's two we's. There's the leadership team, specifically Peter and Marie and I, have looked at a preliminary view of where 1 year from now E&D might work out, given if everything was the same from a historical context through the year to the end of next year, where might we be? And also the budget subcommittee has talked about strategic uses of available resources, because the 5% cap is a hard cap. And if there's a strategic use for money that would be a smart use of district funds and taxpayer funds, which would not require us to go back to them in the future, and the hint is relative to capital needs, we're looking to propose things like that. So stay tuned for further developments there.
Paul.
I just want to point out also that each one of these line items is, you know, when we go through the budget cycle like we're going through now, we have to take educated guesses as to what these reimbursement rates are going to be. And it's important to know that when we do that, we're fairly conservative, because we don't want the surprises going the other way. And so this, some watching may be tempted to say, well, you didn't budget right because you're over. But we don't know what the state's going to come back with in terms of per student aid. We don't know what the state's going to come back with on a percentage of their transportation reimbursement. We certainly don't know what the earnings are going to be doing. So these are, you know, this is the artwork that goes into building the budget, and we just, you know, thank God every year that it comes out that we have happy surprises and not unpleasant ones.
And I guess I'd say that the presentation of a budget is an art, but the actual guts of the budget is more of a science. And so when you said we've budgeted fairly conservatively, I'd maintain that from 15 to 17 you've budgeted very conservatively, because that's how you grow an E&D balance that quickly, that significantly. We will need to transition to a more fairly conservative look. And so, for example, I can guarantee you that at least my budget, my first presentation for next year's budget, will not have an investment earnings assumption of $100,000. That's would be crazy at this point. We've proven that we're able to generate more than that. Now, the market conditions may dictate otherwise. The interest rates that are available are subject to fluctuation. But those are the things that in my second year, in my second budget with the district, I'm going to utilize and be more savvy, I guess, as far as taking the information that's been available in the recent past and utilize it to make a more, I don't want to, this has bad connotations, more reasonable budget, but a fair budget, because to return, it's great to have a positive variance of 180,000. It's nice to have that kind of cushion, but it's also nice to be able to pass a budget with realistic revenue numbers in there that I can say, we're pretty assured of having that number. And so at this point, we're pretty assured we're going to beat 100,000 next year. Sorry to belabor that point. I think it was probably obvious. It's too early in the year to project in a meaningful way expenditures, but I've put some bullets on here, and I'll just let you read them, because it's the popular hit list. It's the things that are expected to vary from year to year, and we'll be spending our time analyzing those in a big picture manner and bringing to you projected expenditures, because that's where the key is going to be. We seem to have put aside 400,000 or so on the revenue side. Where's the expense side going to come out? And I said we can't overexpend the budget, but in the event that something happens and we're getting close in a budget buster line item, we may have to make changes somewhere else. So that's why it's important to keep an eye on the major expenditure categories. So I don't have any news about expenditures, and so perhaps there aren't any questions. And so we'll go on and just say what else is happening in my world overseeing the district's finances. I gave you a copy of a 2-page State House news report. State finance officials were frustrated, and I can say a lot of my colleagues had already joined that club. As I reported to you, there was the possibility of some more funding for fiscal 18, in particular in the categories of circuit breaker, transportation reimbursement, and not so much applicable to Acton-Boxborough, but charter school reimbursement. It did not materialize, and they had an opportunity, it appeared to be an opportunity with some robust finances at the state, but it didn't come to pass for districts in those categories. They did pass a few other things relating to school safety and whatnot, but the items that I teased you with a few meetings ago, sorry, didn't happen. We've started budget development. Those who are familiar with the process and participate with ALG and on the budget subcommittee know that that's happened, and also know of the capital planning committee, which has formed and met and will be making presentations to you in the near future about I'm a CPA, I have a low standard, about an exciting plan for capital improvements for the district. And the financial audit, speaking of exciting, has been completed. I have draft reports. I'm waiting for the auditor to be able to discuss them with me. I have some questions to get them done, and I don't know if it's because of what happened, but the audit firm is located in the Warrants area, and their server was knocked out, and it's just not been good. So I do expect the audit to be issued, possibly not by the next meeting, but certainly within a month. And lastly, I put here a bullet, and I gave you a 4-page report, which I believe is in the material that was made available online. The commentary letter that I got from Moody's. There were many positives in there, and there were some negative items that Moody's identified that really were peculiar more to Massachusetts than to Acton-Boxborough deficiencies. So what's Moody's? Moody's is a ratings agency. They objectively evaluate cities, towns, school districts, counties, water and sewerage districts, etc., to evaluate their creditworthiness so that when those entities go out to issue bonds, the prospective bond buyers have some kind of basis to say, yeah, this is a good credit, they're more likely to repay the debt than this one. And there's an inverse relationship between the rating, the higher the rating, typically the lower the interest rate on the underlying debt that gets issued that's rated by Moody's or one of the other agencies. The best rating is a AAA. The worst, I believe, is a C. When you get down to C, it's not worth evaluating anymore because probably nobody's going to buy the bond anyway. There are many grades in between. It's not simply a AAA, B, and C. Acton-Boxborough has been for years what's called a AA2. So where's that fall? AAA is the top, AA1 is second, AA2 is third. It's a very high rating. There are only 2 regionals in Massachusetts, according to the representative at Moody's, who are rated higher than Acton-Boxborough. I told you about the importance relative to debt, although it's much more important what the debt will be based on the economic conditions than the rating. So in other words, you could be a AAA credit, but in an environment where the finances are unstable, you may end up paying a higher rate regardless. So I don't want to overstate it, but I do think it's in my purview to build a case for an upgrade, so I'm intending to contact Moody's after the audit report is issued and have what's called a ratings call to put a best foot forward and see if they are persuaded that AB's rating should be increased. Questions on that? It's a bit of a dry subject. I tried to cover it really quickly. And last...
So you mentioned that the things that Moody's kind of harped on was the limit on our E&D.
So in Massachusetts, we're capped to 5% in unreserved fund balance, we call it E&D, 5% of revenues. That's it, that's the cap. Nationwide, the average is about 21% because nationwide is not Massachusetts and they don't have this legislatively artificial cap on what they're allowed to hold. Most districts nationwide have the ability to levy taxes and they're their own autonomous entities, and so it's not uncommon for them to have significantly larger balances. Moody's is evaluating Acton-Boxborough compared with not just the 30 Massachusetts districts, but the hundreds and thousands of districts nationwide. I have some strategies on how that could be overcome, though. We'll see. We'll use them. And lastly, we're in budget season, so just a quick look at future assessments. This year is the final year that there's a prescribed allocation. The terms of our projected benefit and base budget and 60-40 split, that's relevant this year, not after this year. So the result is you see the percentages of the assessment between Acton and Boxborough. Next year is the first year where direct per pupil allocation will rule, with the proviso that however it turns out on a per student basis will be shifted $425,000 from Acton to Boxborough. And I just pointed out that the existing methodology shifted $510,000 in fiscal 19, so it's going to be still will be a fairly sizable shift. As a result, there will not be the same higher increase in assessment to Acton versus Boxborough this year. It's going to flip this year because the shift is a much more moderate amount than it was in FY19. And we'll have more details about it as time goes on, but I just wanted to give you this first look. And of course, after that, it's going to be virtually an exclusive per pupil allocation. It's a $25,000 shift in 21 and then zero, just straight per pupil after that. And so one more time. Yes.
about the Budget 101 class? It was a class that you were
Budget
saying.
101. So Angie has asked for Budget 101, so, no, not tonight, right? We have been talking about it, and it is not forgotten. We need to put some dates out there, and as you can maybe see, I enjoy talking about this stuff, so I'm really looking forward to it. You may not, but thank you very much.
Okay, moving on to item 10, school building project.
Okay, I'm going to move us first to the ed plan. Marie, do you want to, well, we've had the revision.
Good evening, everybody. So the education plan has been in your packet, and this is your second read. The first version was at your last meeting. You gave us some really, really fruitful feedback that we have incorporated. And then Adam and Mary in particular really helped go through with a fine-tooth comb and help us edit and make sure the logic flowed. I want to make sure everybody has met Emily Grandstaff Rice. She is from Arrow Street. Will you stand, Emily? So Emily is the project manager for the architect. She is the lead architect for our project. She has been spending lots and lots of quality time with us. And the ed plan is due to the MSBA early next week, as well as about 1,000 other documents that make up the PDP. Tell me what it stands for. The Preliminary Design Program that includes the surveys that have been done on the sites and lots of the other work that's been done. So if we're open to any other comments or feedback on the ed plan, and otherwise we would ask for your vote this evening.
Maya?
I just wanted to thank you for all your work. I did think it had great flow and even greater context for our kids. Thank you.
I have to say, I read this, I tried to read it from the perspective of someone from the MSBA or someone who doesn't know our district and was asking, like, who are these people and what do they want from a space design? And I thought it was really fantastic. The takeaways for me were like net zero building, if we can get there in terms of energy, a twin school, which would be a sea change for Douglas. And it would kind of beg the question, like, what is possible when you are in a school community with another elementary school and even in ECC? And then I was also really taken with the idea of the building as an educational tool that triggers engagement for students. I think that we're kind of accomplishing that in little areas here with the battery-operated storage system. That's how that captures all the solar energy that we're not using, and then we can use that for peak periods. I don't know if that's been installed yet at the high school, but we had discussed that last year, and the outdoor space, the garden space at the junior high. I mean, there's a lot of creativity going on here, and to have a whole building with that design in mind when we build it, that would be really awesome. And of course, we want a space design that's responsive to the needs of every type of learning and every type of teaching. That really came through, and it was exciting to read the draft and see the current kind of the current model that's now housed in the schools, and then to project that out into the future. It's really quite a document, and I also really appreciate all the hard work that has been done on that. I'm troubled by the English language arts instructional program and its emphasis on balanced literacy. It's a continuing concern I have. I feel that we're locking into a building a model that is not really promoting the values and qualities that we want. I think this district is really cutting edge in many ways. We have open enrollment, we have sustainability initiatives that are amazing. We have the only high-performing district, to partner with the Mid-Atlantic Equity Consortium to address equity issues. We do a lot of cutting-edge things, and I think that I would like the district leadership to ask what would it look like to be cutting-edge in literacy here. So I support this document, but I did want to register that one little, not so little, but one concern that I had about that particular aspect of it. Anyone else? Tessa?
Well, I'd just like to echo your concern, because that was something that I spoke briefly outside of the meeting to Deb and Dawn about. And while I do support this document in general and think overall, since I was told it's an architectural document, that it reflects what we need to do and what we need in a school, and being cutting edge in literacy wouldn't necessarily change those spaces. So I am supportive of that, but the language is hard for me too, knowing that the science of reading and literacy isn't really reflected in the language that we use here. So I will register my comment as well.
I enjoyed reading it. It was aspirational in talking about the future. There's a Frary component to it that it incorporates the future curriculum with the design of the building and the plans for sustainability and all that kind of stuff, and I love that. What concerns me a little bit, and it's nothing that we have any control over, is that we talk aspirationally about collaborative learning and all kinds of different styles, but yet we have a standard framework that we also have to live with, and I'm just concerned about tension between the curriculum aspirations and the standards, which are, they have changed in the past year, but they're not looking at the future the same way we are.
So I just want to thank Marie, Dawn, Deb, and all those who contributed, and the community and teachers. I think a lot of people had input into this, and I would like to move to approve the educational plan. And I just want to add just an update on our meeting. So we had a meeting on October 24th. We're continuing to review the feasibility work that Arrow Street is doing, looking at potential layouts to really identify what parcels we're going to include in this preliminary design program. Our committee will meet Monday night to vote that document, which is hundreds of pages. We're actually not even printing it. We have access through a Dropbox. So I just wanted to let you all know that. So, and thank you for your support of the Ed Plan.
Can I add one more thing, unless you were going to? Also, this past Monday, we were invited to what's called the Story of a Building, which has been done 2 or 3 times in partnership between the MSBA and the IG's office, I think. But we were able to spend the day in an elementary school with almost 1,000 students that was opened 2 years ago. So it was fascinating, and it was great to see sort of shared spaces versus non-shared spaces and extended learning spaces. So Peter and JD and I went, along with our owner's project manager, Chuck, and so that's something we have in our toolbox to think through as well.
There we go. Now I'm on. I also just want to echo Mary's sentiments in thanking Marie, Deb, Dawn, Adam as well, because Adam did a considerable amount of work on this to help bring that together. But thank you also for all of the comments that you provided at our last meeting. I thought that was one of the one of the highest quality deliberations on something that allowed us as a professional staff to hear feedback from a committee that we could take back, which was actionable and really help shape the design of the building and reflect the educational values that you hold for the community. So thank you so much for all of that feedback. It was a wonderful opportunity for us to hear from you, and thank you, and thank you for approving it.
Okay, we are at item 11. We're looking for your vote this evening. This is a second read on the superintendent goals. So do I hear a motion unless anyone has anything to say about it? Okay, any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, at this point in the evening, we're going to move to item 12, which is the discussion of the ballot questions and possible position votes for 2 ballot questions. One is a state ballot question 3, and another is the Acton ballot question number 1 on the establishment of the recreational marijuana establishments. So I need to ask the committee, since this is not something I've done very often, is if we discuss things first and then have public comment, or that's typically what happens? Okay. Okay. So I just want to share with you my thinking about this. So discussing resolutions and discussing ballot initiatives is not something that we have done here, and I've been on the committee for, this is my 2nd term now. We've never done this. This is new territory for us. This is not the case in other districts. I'm sorry, we've done this before, discussing ballot initiatives? Okay. Okay. So the idea of a regular discussion of things like resolutions and ballot, this is done on a regular basis and an annual basis, actually, for many other districts. And I'm referring more to the resolutions that come up at the MASC annual conference when I say that. So what I wanted to bring to you tonight, because I felt with all of the emails and the calls and the political climate, I felt it would be disingenuous of me to make a unilateral decision on your behalf whether or not to consider taking a position on these questions. I thought, these issues do affect our students, and I thought it's fair to ask, it's best practice, in my view, to ask the committee if they think it is appropriate for us to take a position on both of these measures. So that is the first question that I'm going to propose for us to do, is to answer this question. Do you think it is appropriate to weigh in on these issues? So maybe we could just start with the Acton question 1, which is a special ballot. It's like a special election ballot initiative on the 9th, on the 6th. I'm sorry. So I'm just going to open it up for comment. Tessa?
I actually think, for 2 reasons, that it is inappropriate for us to take that particular measure up because, A, we're a regional committee. This is an Acton ballot question, and although it is going to come up in Boxborough in May, I don't see how it has anything to do with us as a school committee. I recognize that reading some of the emails and reading things on social media, that obviously there are consequences down the road for making decisions around retail pot shops, but it doesn't directly have anything to do with our students, in that this affects people that are 21 plus, and all of our students are younger than that, and I don't think that it's appropriate for us to take that up as a school committee.
Mary?
I have a different viewpoint. I think this directly affects our students, and that's why, even not as an Acton town member, I think as a school committee member, we should weigh in. The research out of Colorado is showing that student attitudes, the attitudes of young people are changing about marijuana since their law has come in effect. There are attitudes, there's actually a large proportion of youth who believe they drive better under the influence of marijuana because it gives them focus. And that is not true. That is a myth. There's also more attitudes, more lenient attitudes about smoking marijuana. And although there's not enough research, we see with alcohol outlets that the more access there is, the more underage use there is. And so I think this does affect our students.
Paul.
I have no problem taking up the question. You know, we're a committee, and we can have the power to deliberate, and we can come to a conclusion as a committee, and it's just an opinion of another group. So I don't have any problem taking up the question.
And Adam.
So you know, I was torn on this, and in fact, I tried to do a little bit of research around what in the past what guidance was given to school committees around activities in support or against ballot initiatives. And in fact, there was some guidance from the MASC and also from the Office of Campaign and Political Finance. A lot of it revolves around funds being expended in choice of either, you know, in support of the choice or in against the choice. There's one phrase, though, that really sort of stuck out to me, and that was that officials may undertake various official actions that concern ballot questions relating to matters that are within their areas of authority. And so for me, I personally don't feel comfortable sort of representing authority in a town of which I'm not a resident. And I think that's the challenge with our committee, being a two-town committee, is that, you know, as individuals, we all have our opinions, and we're more than welcome to share those opinions in the community. But as a committee as a whole, we're representing two towns, and I think that, you know, as such, we don't necessarily have that authority to make an opinion on something that affects just one portion of our committee. Which is also sort of where I stand on the second question, which we'll get to shortly, but when you look at a statewide ballot initiative, that does have sort of equal weighting on both of the member communities, and so I might feel differently about us having an opinion on that than I would on having one that only affects a portion of our community. And again, that's regardless of how I personally feel about the subject matter in question.
Amy.
So I'm going to say, I do not think that this is something that the school committee should be debating and discussing and taking a stand on. This is not an issue about whether we should legalize marijuana or not. That's already been decided. This is a zoning issue. This is a town issue. This is not something that the school committee is not within our purview. And I don't think it's appropriate that we sit here and every one of us and you know, has personal feelings about this. And we're going to go to the ballot on Tuesday, and we're going to go to special town meeting, and that's where it's appropriate. I don't think here is where it's appropriate.
Okay, at this point, I just want to say, I want to draw your attention to our operating protocols, and they're laminated and will be available at every meeting. But the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 6th bullet, I think I'm just going to read it, and that is under the heading of demonstrate professional and collegial relationships at all time. The bullet reads, and this is our operating protocols, we want to empower school committee members to freely express their opinions, concerns, and ideas in a climate of trust and mutual respect, even in times of disagreement. So, and the other bullet I want to draw attention to is that we are prioritizing, our priority has to be the student needs and interests above all else. That's why we were elected, to serve the students of this district. So with that in mind, those of you who might, and Acton members, who might have weigh in on this, even if you think your opinion is unpopular, I encourage you to contribute to this debate and feel free and empowered to express your opinions in a climate of mutual respect and trust. So, is there anyone, Angie, would you want to say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Jenny?
I want to say, I think that everybody has made very valid points here, but from what I've seen from the emails and the posts are that community members are asking us as elected leaders to express our point of view on this. And to me, it kind of feels like if people want to hear it, why would we say no to expressing our point of view? It's not binding. We're not taking any action. We don't have the power to prevent or allow or to change the outcome of the election, but I think a lot of concerns have been raised, and I think the research from Colorado and the potential impact on our students and their wellness, which is our biggest responsibility. If people who elected us want to know where we stand in a public forum, I just think out of respect for those people that we should respond to them and not, it feels like it would be ducking the issue to me, and perhaps only Acton people, since this is an Acton issue on the committee, would address it now, and if asked at the time it comes before Boxborough, perhaps it could be limited to those members. But otherwise, I think that people are asking us to deliberate and take a stand as a committee, and I don't know why we wouldn't do that.
Tessa, and then Angie.
Well, so say that we decide that we're going, or the majority, because Acton members have a larger vote here, that goes forward. So then how does that get reported out? The Acton-Boxborough Regional School Committee takes whatever stance it is on this thing. I don't feel we're talking about an Acton initiative, an Acton ballot question. Like, I don't live in Acton. So to me, that is a really big problem with this particular question. I don't disagree with the sentiment that you expressed that, we are elected to do something that people want to know what we think about it. But going back to what I said initially, I don't think that this is our purview. There's lots of things that are going on politically that I'm sure people would love to know what we think about because we're their elected officials, but they don't all necessarily pertain to our purview of serving the students of our district, and it is a regional district, and this is not currently on the ballot in both towns on Tuesday.
Angie.
Yeah, I want to talk a little history about this. I think this was, at least I have asked before as a resident and to have the school committee, but I was told that the school committee was not touching the political issues. So I also want to talk about the timing for the trigger of this one, because for the email that I saw, is almost all happened within the 48 hours for this particular thing. And I think that's related to the other ballot question that was kind of on and off and on and off. So I kind of want to talk about, I think this was triggered by the other event, and that's why it's here. So I would say this is kind of like not people that doesn't want it, but it was not kind of didn't realize that it was okay, then it was started asking. So I kind of want to clarify that there is a time sequence in terms of that when the request was made.
Do you want me to respond to that, or okay, Paul?
So if we were to take this question up, taking the question up, we don't have to be unanimous about it. And I'm hearing what Tessa's concern is, and I understand that. To me, there are two issues, though, is that how you feel about the issue, and then whether it's appropriate or not to take it up. And I am thinking of Tessa's position is that by not wanting to take it up for technical reasons, you may appear to be on one side of the issue or not, and I wouldn't, want my colleagues to be in that position. It might be a misinterpretation of the committee's, decision. But
Mary?
I'm just going to reiterate that I do think this is in our purview because I think it'll directly affect the students in our district, the Acton students in our district, and even potentially the Boxborough ones. And I think, if there was a zoning issue in Acton and it was connected to our campus and our students, we would care. We care about the crosswalks where accidents are happening, and we're asking, to be included in some of those decisions. I think this directly relates to our students.
Adam?
I appreciate all of the viewpoints said. There have been some very compelling comments made. The one other thing that strikes me is if we feel like we're going to continue to have these types of discussions and requests from community, I would really appreciate if we could make these decisions and comments prior to the election time beginning. And so I'll remind everybody that as of October 22nd, early voting was available, and I personally will be out of town on election day, and so I've already cast my vote. And I would have actually appreciated having this conversation with the committee prior to that date, and I think that that would be fair for all of those other members of the community who might be interested in our thoughts and comments to have these types of discussions prior to when voting begins.
Thank you for that input. Eileen?
I think I heard everybody. I didn't mean to say last or maybe almost the last. I definitely heard Mary. I think everybody get their sense. I love to talk about the 12.1. However, I heard everybody else too, and also me too. Just like Adam, I already casted my vote in town, and I think as the voted official, we still have our individual rights to not speak on those very sensitive issues, which that's just, I think we have the right to reserve that, say, that opinion, or that I'd rather to have my private to stay in the booth and cast my vote, and I don't want people to know that.
Mary?
I'm sorry, I can't help it. I actually think you can have two different viewpoints. I think you can have a personal viewpoint and then a viewpoint as a school committee member. When I first came on to the school committee, somebody asked me, how are you going to handle issues when it's something related to your children? And there's a difference between what's good for your children and what's good for the district. And my answer is, as a school committee member, I'm going to advocate for the students in the district. As a parent, I'm going to advocate for my own children, and I think there's a difference. So what you say as a school committee member doesn't have to be the same as what you feel as an individual.
Amy?
I agree with you, Mary, very much. I guess where I'm struggling is that for me to speak as a school committee member, I'm frustrated because this happened so quickly. How can I possibly speak intelligently about how having, sales within our town or a few miles away from our town, and now the differences are going to impact. I feel a little bit like that. How can I speak, about how it's going to affect our kids if I haven't been given enough time to think about how is it going to affect our students as a whole?
Angie?
Yeah, I agree with Mary said that we can have a personal view and as a school school committee member. And I also agree with what Amy said, which is the timing. I think the timing is critical because there's open meeting law, there's the 48 hours notification requirement, and the reason for that is so we can have enough time to digest the information. And I agree with Adam too, which is that if it's at the beginning of the vote, then there's requests coming, then we can have time and we can take a real good consideration and represent the community and to vote and to digest the information. And to have to be honest, to have two political issues on one committee like a week ago, I kind of feel this is being pushed by, I don't know what it is, but I'm really uncomfortable with the timing that for the pushing this out, and because as we saw this the other request to put on the agenda, like I think it's on the 26th. That's way more than 48 hours ago. Then you were decided not to put it on. Then you later change it. So I think there is the timing in terms of these two issues. I think is really critical because we got the updated agenda by like 2 o'clock this afternoon, which is I was like, I can't read it. I can't prepare for it. So I think that the timing is really. I think this issue has an impact for our kids, and with the time, then I think that as a school committee that we should vote and cast our opinion whether we should vote on that. I think that will be appropriate, but with the emergency kind of, let's make a stand right now, right here, like 3 days, 4 days before the voting, I feel pressure, yeah.
I can appreciate that. I can tell you that it was not in my mind that this was even going to come up when I did propose for us to review the resolutions from MASC. It kind of opened the door. It was an uncanny kind of set of circumstances that one of the resolutions pertains to. It's on the same topic basically as question 3. So I had a choice. Shall I turn away from the public's need and desire for us to be responsive, or we can figure out a way to build this in? So I mean, I think that in the future we can be more planful about it if this is the direction we want to go in terms of evaluating the resolutions every year. We might find ourselves doing what other school committees have done and weigh in on ballot questions. But again, this is new territory for us, and it wasn't intentional, obviously, to put pressure on you in terms of time. But I respect the fact that this does feel that way. Paul.
So you referenced the operating, we're having referenced the operating protocols. I just want to point out or remind the committee that the second to last bullet is refrain from addressing issues that have not been previously brought to the attention of the chair and or superintendent except in emergency situations. So we're calling this an emergency situation?
Well, the Attorney General who was consulted on this this morning, let us know that it is for emergency situations, but also circumstances that are unforeseen that come up and you feel that there's a time component to it and need to be addressed, or you would like to be addressed. Yep.
So I agree with Ginny. I think that the people want to hear what we have to say, but I also hear Angie is I didn't get a chance to read through everything that I wanted to read through. Unfortunately I have to work. So the time I had to read through the emails was not enough to get me ready.
If I could, I also really appreciate what Angie said. I think that in terms of how this came up in the community, it appeared to me that community members found out that other school committees had taken a stand, and given everything that Peter said in his update, I think that people are looking for leaders who are going to stand up and, I don't know, I won't say the content, so I don't think it's inappropriate in general for school committees to weigh in. I completely agree with Mary. This is going to impact our kids. There's no question about it. There's also a lot of other equity issues, such as
if not, our kids, then whose kids? And this is an issue that I know a great deal about, so I guess I wasn't really taking into consideration. It's very complicated, and I think that we could spend 4 hours discussing this issue and a yes vote and a no vote. So perhaps because of the very small time frame, just to send a signal to community members that we're not rejecting their request, or calling into question why it came when it did. It came late, and this is our only meeting. The election is Tuesday, so it's not. I don't think anybody was trying to put pressure or make this jump out at us for nefarious reasons. But just given the circumstances and people's inability to read, our inability as a committee to really think about this thoughtfully, perhaps tonight isn't the time that we could do this.
And I'll just add that unlike question 3, where we have a record, policies and procedures, and there's history there, there's no history here for this. So that's, I think, adding to the feeling of pressure. And Maya, did you have something to say?
I just wanted to say that I want to be sensitive to the committee's lack of preparation. And I want to be sensitive to the climate that the committee has endured in the past, year and a half or so. It's, I feel uncomfortable asking people to do something they're not comfortable or didn't think they signed on for. Despite my own personal feelings, this is a lot of ambivalence and not a lot of time to be ready in a town where we have had, 2 towns where we've had a lot of strife and animosity and a climate that has felt divisive. So I'm just a little bit worried for us.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that the issues are the timing of this wasn't sufficient, didn't give you sufficient time to really feel comfortable preparing. Others just feel that this shouldn't be something that we do. And then from the Boxborough members, which is it's a concern, it concerned me greatly that we it fragments our committee when we can't include the Boxborough members. I mean, we're not just Acton, we're Acton Boxborough. So I do think this absolutely affects our children, and we all have our personal views. I don't hear the consensus that would make me feel comfortable moving forward with the position. So I want to make sure that I'm reading the room right here in the committee.
So you're not comfortable moving this particular one or both?
No, I'm just talking about question 1 right now.
So, like I previously stated, that this one came up with the previous one. So I kind of feel if we move the other question, then this one should be moved. If we don't, then we shouldn't. So that's how I feel.
Amy?
I feel like those are two different ballot questions. You heard me right. You hear what you're repeating is how I feel. I'm very clear on how I'm going to vote personally. As a school committee member and representing the students, I haven't had enough time to actually educate myself enough to responsibly vote with that in mind.
Okay. Eileen, we'll take one more.
I have to agree with Angie. If we do not discuss number 1, we cannot discuss number 2, because that's all same issue.
Tessa?
I disagree. They are not the same issues at all. Question 1 applies only to one town, and there are some questions amongst committee members, including myself, as to whether or not that's actually our purview. And Diane presented it as we are discussing question 1. I don't think that the two can be tied together. I don't think it's fair to tie them together. We haven't even discussed whether or not it's appropriate for us to weigh in on question 3. In fact, the other school committees that Diane referenced all weighed in on question 3. This question 1, I agree with Angie, was tacked on by community members when they saw that, you know, there was interest amongst community members to have us have a say on question 3. And I think they're totally separate issues, and I think we should consider them separately.
And I'll just say that I tacked them on, and I stand by that. It's unfortunate that this came up when it did at the last minute, but I feel like it is really important to be responsive, and especially when there are issues that are affecting our kids here in the district. So just to be clear. So I feel like it's appropriate to take this off the table as something that we want to move forward on with a position. Oh, yes, okay. So I'm going to ask for maybe a show of hands in the audience of who is here to speak on question 1. Okay. I mean, I think it would be appropriate to hear what the public has come to say. Members of the public have, you know, arranged their schedule so they can come here, and we want to hear your position. So if you would like to speak, please approach the podium and just state your name and town and street. If you, yes, and so we do have a time limit. We will. How many people are here to speak on question 1? Okay. Yeah. Okay, we typically give 2 minutes for public speak. I think the way we're going to do this now, since there are so many people and a whole nother ballot initiative to talk about, is to time 1 minute, and then when the timer goes off, that'll be a sign for you to just start to conclude your comments.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I heard a lot say this is the ban is only for Acton. The ballot question is for Acton, and school committee can't represent two towns, can't make a decision. But actually, there's a big grassroots initiative in Boxborough. They already passed the general bylaw ban in September. And they are waiting for the dates to decide the date to do the ballot vote. So if today you say, okay, because it's the ballot question for Acton, then next time when Boxborough community ask you for your support, you say, okay, this is for Boxborough, then nobody get support from school committee. And also, no matter how complicated is explanation in this board, in this committee, say about it's different issue, but in its political issue. They are all political issue. And if school committee take a position on one issue and not take another issue, the message sent to the public is school committee don't support the ban. It's simple as that. And that message sent to the sent to the school district, sent to our kids. What kind of message is that? Yeah, please think about it. We want to, these two questions, in essence, there's the common essence of these two questions is protect the vulnerable, the most vulnerable. Thank you. Oh, sorry. I'm Ali Lee. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lisa Pearson.
And I appreciate everything everyone said. I understand this has come up at the last minute, and people haven't had time to do the research that you guys, I know, love to do on everything, and it's really important. But I think it's kind of a no-brainer, just because you may have your own personal views about this, but when it comes to the school system, I don't see any scenario where this is good for students. I think it may have no impact, or it will have a negative impact. So I don't think it's that complicated for a school committee. I know you guys wish you had more time, but I'm really worried about this, what this will do to our town. I moved here because of the schools. I wouldn't move here if there was a recreational pot shop here. And I think a lot of people feel that way. And I think it'll really, diminish all the great work. The schools have been great for my kids. They've had a great experience, and I would just hate to take away from that. Thanks.
Folks, I'm Bill Beebe. I live at 11 Long Meadow Way, Bella's Farm. I second what the lady just said. I am concerned that people come to Acton and pay our high taxes, not because there's great places to work here, but because of the schools. And places that have pot shops right now, Air and Lowell, they don't draw people there for their schools. If the schools, if I can't believe if we had a pot shop here, the schools would necessarily go downhill that fast. There's still plenty of people, smart people here, but people moving in who are smart and want to bring their smart kids and pay the high taxes, I just think would potentially not do it. They move to Concord or Lexington or someplace where the town has already taken a stand against it. I have a son who lives in Lowell. Lowell is one of the pot shop towns, and as I said, Lowell is not drawing people there by their schools, but boy, do they have pot shop billboards. He lives near 110. A billboard, you come into Lowell and it says, "This is how you get the pot." Wouldn't that look awful in Acton if we had that? So I'm concerned about a spiraling drop in property taxes and property values, and I think we have a very vulnerable situation here. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Chetan Vidhate. I have two points here. First point is having pot shop in town will bring a lot of traffic, a lot of driving under influence. That increases risk a lot, and it's directly related to our community, school community. Second thing is we already seen in websites like Zillow and Redfin that properties are now advertised as, okay, this property is in a town where there is no pot shop. So it is actually taking effect. And as gentleman said, I personally came here because of this good school committee. If there was a recreational pot shop here, I wouldn't have chosen Acton to move. Thank you.
Hey, my name is Ravi, and I have two kids in Conant. And I second what these guys said because I'm worried about, if the pot shop comes to this town, it will affect the property value, the kind of students that the town will bring in, and it's going to become a spiral eventually, and that will, like for the same, like what Chetan said, I also came to this town because I want to have my kids go into this good school district and become something in life. Now, if there was a recreational pot shop, I would not have moved in here. So I just request that this issue is in effect going to affect the schools in some way. So I think it's appropriate for the school committee to take some stand on this.
My name is Tin Che, and I live in 2 Bramble Way in Acton. And the first thing is, if we don't have a problem, why we are trying to have a discussion and provide a solution and influence the vote, like next week, right? My understanding is school committee is trying to solve the problem. Say if next week the vote happened and there's a result for both these two ballot questions at hand, and at that time we can say, okay, this is a vote. How do I approach? And like, how do I do something for our kids here, right? I thought that's what school committee is for. Instead of before the vote, oh, let's take a stand and swing the vote. And as a matter of fact, maybe I'm incorrectly interpreting the law, but my understanding is there is a State Ethics Commission Advisory 11.1. So my question is, are school committee members considered as public employee? If it is, then there is a specific guidance here for political activity. And secondly, that's just a Ethics Commission advisory, but it's actually based on Mass General Law, which is 268A. So if anything, I would say we should study at least, is this something prior to voting? Okay, we are doing some political activity here. Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Steve Ballard from Boxborough. I may surprise you by breaking character or perceived character, say some positive things. After one comment, I don't agree with the Boxborough-Acton dichotomy here, which I do on other occasions, because as I understand it, I wasn't there, but the special town meeting in Boxborough, you know, was a vote in favor of a ban, and it's not on the ballot this week, but it is going to be on May. The Board of Selectmen already decided to do that. So it's a parallel process, different timeline, but these are very, I think there's no reason why you couldn't decide this now. It's sort of like you have Acton town meeting and then you have Boxborough town meeting. But anyway, the main thing I wanted to say was that, you know, I've been communicating with people on both sides or different sides of this, and I'm glad to see deliberation here and thoughtful comments by everyone. And it's important for us to try to respect those who have different views. It's probably weird hearing me say this, but I want to compliment some people that I've criticized just to do exactly what I'm suggesting we do. And there are many more compliments that could come. But Paul for his dedication to the special needs population of our schools, Tessa for her advocacy for equity, and Amy and Mary for putting in tons of hours for our school district. And I think if we keep those things in mind, that we, you know, there are people who disagree with us on stuff, on these hot button issues, but we are trying to do what's right for our district. And you know, there's no reason why we can't have a deliberation. If you decide to do it or don't do it. But I'm glad to see that you guys are thoughtful about this, and thank you.
I'm Lily Chen from Acton. Not specific to this ballot question, but I just want to make some general comments. You are the leaders. We elect you. Whether you like it or not, we look up to you, right? So we put you on spot here today to make a statement because we want you to lead the community by stating your view. Whether it's a unanimous view or disagreed, split view, we don't really care. We just want you to make a statement, you know. So that's how I view the leadership is in this community. And I'm very disappointed, to be honest, to see there's a split between I'm a Boxborough elected officer, this is an Acton issue, I can't vote on that, right? So I think we're talking about community, school as a community, which is a united community between, you know, united Acton and Boxborough together, right? We're neighbors, whether you like it or not, we join in the hip. Whatever happened in Acton has a large implication to the Boxborough community because our kids, they don't differentiate themselves whether they're from Acton or Boxer. They sit in the same class, they take in the same lessons, you know, they're really good friends. There's no divide between them, Boxborough and Acton, you know. So the second comment is really, so I think you mentioned 3 reasons why you guys don't want to take a vote. One, the first 2 really apply to both, right? Both of them were added to the agenda last minute, right? And I forgot what the second one. The third one might be only applied to the first, for the first question, but I strongly feel the first 2, the reason that you mentioned that you feel like people are not comfortable of making that vote, apply to both. Okay.
I'm curious to hear if anyone was persuaded by what was said. Paul.
So I'm an engineer, and I rarely have the luxury of all the data that I want. I have to rely on judgment. I've read enough of the emails to get the gist, and I do view this as taking a stand that in support of protecting the children of the district. So I'm ready to take it up.
I agree with Paul.
Okay, and Mary, you were persuaded from the beginning, and from Boxborough. So Tessa, have you?
Well, I just want
changed
to
your view?
speak to that last comment. I'm not opposed to taking this up because I view Acton and Boxborough differently, but I'm not voting on your ballot measure on Tuesday because it's an Acton ballot measure, and I understand what Steve said, that yes, eventually this will come up. But that is my reasoning, not because I view our students as different, or I view the issues as different, or I view it as not whatever. I wanted to clarify that. That wasn't my issue. I mean, my feeling is that I do think question 3 is appropriate for us to take up. So if I feel that way, you know, I'll just abstain from the vote on the first one if you all want to take it up.
Anyone else want to weigh in? Because I'm seeing a shift. So, Amy.
I would just have to say that how I vote as an individual and how I vote as a school committee are not necessarily always exactly the same thing. And I am not comfortable taking a vote on something that I don't have enough information on. So if everyone wants to take it up, that's fine, but I will also abstain.
Adam.
Yeah, you know, I thought it's an interesting point that the community wants to hear our opinion as leaders, and I respect that. And when we think about how that happens in other ballot initiatives and warrants that come out, there is a thoughtful process that Board of Selectmen or FinCom goes through, and they make that decision, and then that gets published as part of the warrant that's sent to the community. And I think that's an appropriate process, and you know, I would reiterate again, if we want to do this, then we should follow a similar procedure that gives both us and the community enough time to have our opinions heard and have our collective decision shared with the community. I think you know, the concern I have is more around whether or not we've had enough time and we've given enough opportunity to both sides of any question to be presented. You know, again, because this was added at last minute, there may be other opinions that we didn't necessarily get a chance to hear this evening either. So I would share in my feeling that I would also abstain from this if we brought it to a vote.
Okay. Maya.
Do you think it would be possible to read to the audience our actual job description?
Are you referring to the operating protocols?
No, I'm referring to our actual duties and responsibilities as school committee members. Can someone pull that up so because I'm just uncomfortable pushing people into taking a position without the preparation, without the proper amount of debate. We are not in the business of making day-to-day decisions, even when it comes to how to educate our students or what is best for students' well-being, because we follow our educators, our administrators, research, presentations. We read 115 pages, you know, of what we think might be best around student issues. And we come here with a lot of guidance and a lot of time to mull over something and prepare. So I either think maybe the administration wants to speak up, and I'm not trying to be coy or not take responsibility here as a school committee. I think it's really important, but I think that if people aren't comfortable doing something that's not in our purview, we just can't push the issue. Again, I think we're a volatile committee that is still recovering from a really volatile, tumultuous time, and that's not to say that I want a pot shop open next to the Verizon store. It will affect all of our students, and it will certainly be an issue for our towns and our kids. But I feel like, you know, we have to debate this some other time about future ballot questions that, you know, we want to take a stand on or don't. But this may not be the time.
Mary.
So I totally respect people's feelings about not having enough time to prepare, but I do want to say that I actually disagree with something Diane said earlier, that this doesn't connect to our policies, because I think it does connect to our policies, because we have policies around substance use. And, you know, alcohol is an illegal substance for underage youth, and we know our kids are drinking alcohol. And so for me, the logical thing is that then we're at risk if marijuana is that much more accessible. So I think it does relate directly to a comment that was said earlier of we're in the business of solving problems. I like to think we're in the business of preventing problems. And so I think taking a stance before a problem happens is a really good thing.
I just don't think we've done enough research about what will happen to marijuana use, which is readily available for all of our students to indulge in, including opioids and alcohol and things that are, you know, terrible for our students. And I just don't think we have enough information. You know, I don't want a pot shop around the corner from the schools or 3 miles away from the schools, but I just don't think that we know enough. What is going to happen to the drug habits of our students once it's open? Maybe it'll, you know, I mean, I listened to some compelling arguments at town meeting around this issue. I just don't think I can stand here and know enough, and I certainly haven't researched enough to make a big, bold statement. And I don't think some of these people feel like doing that right now, and I can understand why. So I think we just ought to respect that and discuss something that pertains to our students, which is question 3, and I think we should move on.
Okay. Peter has been so kind to pull up the policy outlining our duties. What's the file number on that? Do you want to?
Want me to read it?
Yeah, could you?
Sure. So this is for the policy interest people out there. It's BBAA. It's in the B section of the policy, and it's school committee member authority. I'm going to read the duties section because I think that's what you were asking for. So it says the duties and obligations of the individual committee member may be enumerated as follows. 1, to become familiar with the general laws of the Commonwealth relating to education and school committee operations, regulations of the Massachusetts Board of Education, policies and procedures of these school committees and school department. Number 2, to keep abreast of new laws and the latest trends in education. 3, to have a general knowledge of the goals, objectives, and programs of the town's public schools. 4, to work effectively with other committee members without trying to either dominate the committee or neglect his or her share of the work. 5, to respect the privileged communication that exists in executive sessions by maintaining strict confidentiality on matters discussed in these sessions, except that which becomes part of the public record once it has been approved for release. 6, to vote and act in committee impartially for the good of the students. 7, to accept the will of the majority vote in all cases, and to remember that he or she is one of a team and must abide by and carry out all committee decisions once they are made. 8, to represent the committee and the schools to the public in a way that promotes interest and support. 9, to refer questions and complaints to the proper authorities, and 10, to comply with the accepted code of ethics for school committee members. So those are the powers and duties in the policy. You know, I will comment, as a paid employee of the district, I cannot comment about how people should vote on any ballot initiatives, nor can any of our professional staff. That's not the role that we play in this. We can advise regarding factual information to help those decisions, but we cannot advise one way or the other. I appreciate that, but we're just not allowed to.
I'm not comfortable asking for consensus with this much division, I have to say. So I'm going to set my personal opinions aside and ask that we move on to the ballot, question 3. Angie.
I just want to say what Maya said. Then if that is the case, then I still support that if we're not going to discuss this, we shouldn't discuss the second question.
I'm going to move on to actually, I'm going to disagree with you, okay? I think it's like just apples and oranges. I understand that it's a political, it's a ballot question, and they have that in common, but the issues are very different. So I'm going to move on to item 12.2, which is regarding the state ballot question 3 referendum on the existing law regarding gender identity in places of public accommodation. And you will see that item 12.2.1 refers to policies that we currently have in place. We have a very strong record of protecting the rights of transgender students. So I can tell you just a little background that there have been many school committees that have voted a position on this issue. So I'm asking for your feedback on whether or not we should join those school committees in voting a position on question 3. Angie?
Well, I kind of still want to say the same thing, because if the first case, then if we don't have enough information, then it will be the same for the second one. So that's my first one, is
okay.
Because this is just, we're kind of biased here. We're treating it the same thing, same timing and same kind of the core of the issue, but differently. So that's
okay. Well, let me ask members if you do feel like the same way, that you have not had time to prepare, or if you feel more confident that you have read the policies and understand what is at stake here for this cohort of people who are addressed in this ballot initiative. I'm going to call on Tessa first and then Amy.
I disagree entirely that these are similar in issue. This ballot question asks us just to add gender identity to the list of prohibited grounds for discrimination in places of public accommodation, just as we would not discriminate against somebody's race or color or religious creed or anything else. We have policies in place that protect our transgender students here, and there's no reason that we wouldn't support this law, this ballot question. I think that this is a human rights issue. I don't think it has anything to do with politics, and so I do think it's absolutely 100% appropriate for us to take it up.
I'm just going to throw out here that this is a referendum, and it's consonant with what's already in place in our policy manual. So I'm actually a little bit confused about like I'd like to hear more from members who might object to this, because we have clearly as a school committee laid down policy on this issue. So I'm going to take just a couple of questions and then try to just move this along to public comment. So Angie, since you've already spoken several times, I'll just go to Amy and then Angie and then to public comment if there's no other.
I was just going to say, I was going to really reiterate what you just said. We already have a very strong policy and procedures and guidelines that we voted on, a year ago, 2 years ago. We've already taken a stand, and so the idea that, this is already information that we have discussed. So I don't see, this is totally different. The we've had a lot of time to digest kind of the research and information out there. And this is, and I'm completely with Tessa, this is a human rights issue. So I have no problem. This is directly affecting our students.
Adam?
I'm quite torn because obviously my comments to the previous were around our due diligence in providing this information to the community in advance. I do believe that we have a clear point of view on this, and it's been codified in our policies and procedures. And so again, I wonder, if that's the case, and additionally later on in our agenda, we will have an item that is complementary to this question, whether or not it's worthwhile to put ourselves at odds with something that we just said when we have both previous guidance to the community and we have an opportunity in another area to make that point made.
So I'm going to take Angie and then Ginny.
So I want to go back to the typing issue as far as the open meeting law. So I look at the email log. The first request to add this on the agenda is more than 48 hours. And I have a log here. And then it was turned around, then it was decided. We talked about it, and there was email, then it was decided not to put on the agenda. Then there were 2 emails requested that's more than 48 hours. I also called the Attorney General this afternoon, and the answer I got is the 48 hours emergency only apply that if you don't have information, that information is occurred within the 48 hours. Then if you have the information is prior than 48 hours, it's not cannot be considered as an emergency. So you cannot amend the agenda because of that. So I want to clarify that.
Jenny? So when I originally received emails about question 3, since we were debating resolution 7, which will happen hopefully sooner rather than later, my thinking around that was that because it relates to transgender students, that question 3, it was very likely that question 3 would come up in that context. So for that reason, and because it's really more of like the resolution's more kind of pure school committee territory, whereas the ballot question is a little bit dicey for some, I made the decision not to include it. When the emails for question 1 started coming in, I really had to think about, do I want to just turn a deaf ear, or do I want to include everybody? And I made that decision. We did call the AG's office this morning, and they supported our amending the agenda. So that's my answer. So I'm just going to move on to Ginny to keep this moving.
Well, I'm going to make a suggestion, and that's that in response to requests that we take it. I totally agree this is a human rights issue, and I understand why it's coming up at this time too. But in response to the request from the community, we try to develop a policy of getting those requests earlier, a process for dealing with those requests and any process we want to go through. And in response to the requests, just refer the community members to our existing policy, which is, I believe, very strong and in protecting students with gender identity differences, and we're not in any way going to reconsider that policy. Nobody's backing away from that policy. So, that's our policy, and I think that, it's available, and I think it speaks very loudly as to where this committee stands on this particular issue. And then in light of the fact that the timing and the agenda and all of that, that it's just at this time there's too many problems with us taking a position, but we're happy to consider doing that in the future under better, a more regular process.
Okay, Eileen and then Mary.
I think I'm sorry. I like to go back to just one sentence. Mary, I loved all you said about number one. I should say that. I love it so much. I think both of the items are really related with our student, totally, definitely. But however, I still have my own opinion. We should not talk about on the table here. I'm not comfortable to talk about the here. Both items, they're all political issues somehow, and we should cast our vote when we go to the voting booth. Thank you.
You're not going to be surprised that I think we should weigh in on this. I think that as leaders in this community, we have a responsibility to do this. This is directly in parallel with our policies. I'm a little concerned, frankly, that if we just say it fits with our policies, it's not going to be a clear enough message. I think we need to be really clear, and we should take a stance and support this.
Okay, yes, I'm going to, so I'm going to ask Paul, and I'm going to ask you to hold your question. I'm looking at the clock, and we have many, many other items on the agenda. So.
But I thought you just said that you need to hear from different opinions.
Yeah, yes, and I'm going to call on Paul and ask him, because he has not contributed yet, and we've heard from you several times. I'm not meaning to put you off. I'm just looking at the clock and concerned about the time. So, Paul?
I was ready to take up the question one. I'm ready to take up this one as well.
Okay, so let's how many people are here to speak on question three? Okay, so if you could line up, we'll have that same procedure. Yeah. After.
So there was...
So Angie, go ahead. I'm going to let you talk. Okay.
So I want to talk about a little bit different perspective from this issue. And I want to talk about from the resolution that the LGBTQ rights that we're supporting versus a bill that has a lot of legal loophole. And when I want to talk about when we are teaching our students, always listen to the both sides of any statement. We should always respect any disagreement and work together to support of our student in school, so that all the student experience, so we have the equal education, equal access to the education. So in here that I want to bring about that there are in the past couple weeks, days, that in the social media, and there are quite a lot of comments about this agenda here. Okay, and there is a group with over 1,000 people, but there is only one voice. I kind of want to challenge the colleagues here. If any political issue that has only one side of the voice, is that a problem with the communication channel, or do we have a problem with the communication channel, or do we have a problem in the environment? Because the reason why you don't hear the other side is because the environment is so hostile and nobody is there to speak up. This is why this issue has only one side of the voice. And I think that's why I am really, really uncomfortable, and by just speaking here, because I kind of feel I'm the single voice here and putting myself and vulnerable to what you just said. It's very, very, very uncomfortable. I'm putting myself here by just be able to express a different opinion. Okay, so the other thing is I want to talk about Resolution 7 is totally different from the ballot question number 3. The reason why is because there was a bill that's passed in 2011 that's on the transgender, that has focus on the transgender protection. And that law went into effect on July 1st, 2012. Also so we have something. So this is not a bill that has extra, but we have a transgender protection law prior than 2016 already. So I also want to talk about in this bill, it talks about the gender self-identification. So the concern about, I can totally understand why why we need the self-identification, which because there is the need to be able to really know. Nobody can decide who you are. Okay. By the way, I want to just clarify. I'm 100% support for the LGBTQ rights, but I want to point out there are some big legal loophole right here, and so in terms of the concern of when we talk about if we are able to have self-identification gender, then the concern of that, then it will be the balance of the welfare gains of self-identification for transgender people against the potential harm to the others. I'm also concerned about the balance, especially for the sensitive students.
Angie, I'm just gonna stop you. You've talked about the Facebook page apparently, and you feel that there are many issues that you're talking about that are of great importance and worthy of conversation. This conversation here among these members of this school committee is different. We are not Facebook. We are not voicing our own opinions. We are trying to reach consensus based on what we know the school committee has stood for in the past. And that has been like crystal clear. So I do want to honor the process of deliberation, but it's really important that we see ourselves not as 11 individuals right now, but as a committee, and look at what we have stood for on this particular topic in the past and codified in our policies. And this is just kind of bump it up to the next level. Do we now want to, or do we not want to take a stand and vote on question 3? It's not that big of a jump based on what we have in our policies currently. So I appreciate that there are differences of opinion, and in question 1, many people said, look, I'm going to vote one way as a school committee member and another way as a parent, or just a citizen. That holds true for this too. This is not really a venue to talk about deeply our personal views. It's really more of a, what have we stood for as a committee, and do we want to take it to the next level and voice our support for question 3?
Yeah,
okay?
So I do want to point out that because we want to support the wellness, we want to support the equity, we want to support the safety. And because of the legal loophole here, then we are in danger of the safety and the wellness of the student here. So there is a different opinion. And in terms of that, what the school should be doing is we need to look at the different perspectives. And to me, this is Resolution 7 and this question are 2 different questions.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and take public comment now. Please remember to state your name and where you live, and we will limit you to 1 minute, and then when the alarm goes off, you'll have little time to wrap it up. Okay, thank you.
My name is Kim, and I live in Townsend Road in Acton. And I want to bring up this, please don't bring political into the school. I found that once we have the political stand, it will create conflict among the parents, among the students. Acton at the AB school has been very good. That's why I like the school so much. And I do not want, because of the political stand, it will create a conflict. And we all treasure, we all respect everyone, every student. They should have the student right. They should be respected, no matter what about the orientation, what about the race, whatever. So I just really please don't bring the political stand and create a conflict among the parents. And I found it starts coming up. I'm very worried. And this not only me, and a group of parents. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Mike Balulescu. I live on Maple Street here in Acton. I'm also the president of the Acton-Boxborough Education Association, and we are part of a group called the Massachusetts Teachers Association, which has already endorsed a vote of yes on 3. But most importantly, I'm a junior high school teacher. I teach right here in this building, and right over there in the lobby every day through those doors come students who are transgendered, students who are questioning their gender identity or gender expression, and I can think of no more important task than the body here than to do everything they can in their power to protect the dignity and humanity of those students who are vulnerable, those students who are in need of support, and so I think this is an easy vote for you. We want to stand up for our students, we want to stand up for our values, we want to stand up for the common humanity here in the Commonwealth, and that's what this ballot initiative is all about. So speaking for myself, speaking for this building, speaking for the teachers, and I think speaking for many people in the community, I wholeheartedly endorse you taking this up, and I sincerely hope that you will vote to endorse a yes on 3 vote. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Christine Brown. I grew up in Acton and have lived here as an adult for 18 years. I have 3 children, and one of them happens to be transgender. He's 9 years old, and his well-being is not a political issue. I have in my hand the district's policy for students who are transgender, and it explicitly states that the district will establish, maintain, and foster an education environment that is safe, welcoming, and free from stigma and discrimination for all students, regardless of sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression. Demonstrate commitment to equality, equity, and inclusion, as well as respecting and accommodating diversity among members of the school community. And transgender students will be permitted to use the restroom locker room assigned to the gender the student consistently asserts at school. I would vouch that there have not been an uptick in bathroom or locker room incidents, and we can ask Mr. Light to weigh in on that safety point that you brought up earlier. 2 years ago, the state passed a law protecting transgender people from discrimination in public places, and this school policy followed in 2017. A no vote on question 3 would repeal these protections, allowing people like my 9-year-old son to be kicked out of public places like restaurants, stores, or even doctor's offices. It would also open the door to more bullying and discrimination than this vulnerable population already experiences. The existing district policy is a strong statement in support of question 3. I encourage the school committee to stand by our district's core values and its written policy and publicly support yes on 3. Thank you.
Bill Beebe. I live at 11 Longmeadow Way in Bellows Farms. I'm torn on this question. The hazards that I think I see in it are the questions for the general law, and it may not be applicable to the school because I don't know what your policies are really in the school. I have a long-term friend who is when I knew him in college in the early 60s, he was an architect studying architecture, and he liked to race fast cars, build fast cars. Today, he is a woman for the last 20 years, and from the pictures, a fairly attractive-looking woman, and he still is a tremendous architect, retired architect professor from a prestigious college down in Virginia, and he still builds racing cars. I would not want him to be in trouble in a bathroom if he was forced to go into a men's room and some macho type beat him up in there. That would be absolutely horrible. I want people who are transgender to be respected for who they are as people inside the outer shell of sexuality. It's the person inside that really counts. I want them to be respected and delighted in by the community. At the same time, I have 3 granddaughters, sweet granddaughters of grade school and junior high age in Concord, and I would not want them to be attacked in a public bathroom by, say, a man in his 40s who just decided that he said, today I feel like I'm a woman and I'm going to go in there. So there needs to be protections. I would suggest for my idea, I'm an engineer like you, Raytheon retiree. A practical matter, I think, pardon me? Okay, the practical matter is to put video surveillance in the hallway outside the doors so you can see who's going in and out of the restrooms and the locker rooms, okay? Thank you.
Hello, I'm Nicole LaRock Kawoko, and I live on Bromfield Road. I'm going to be quick because I hate talking in front of people. I just had to grab a quote from the superintendent's update real quick. And I quote, "I want to take this opportunity to reiterate on behalf of all of our district leaders, faculty, and staff throughout the district that we will not tolerate, accept, condone, or be silent with regard to bias and hate." And just also, end quote, thank you. Also reiterate that taking a stance on question 3 is in support of already existing policies at AB, as Chris spoke of. Saying no to 3 is singling out a specific group for discrimination, and that group is particularly vulnerable. And I just wanted to add one more thing. There have been, and this is a fact, there has been no uptick in any safety issues in bathrooms since the public accommodations anti-discrimination law went into place in 2016. That's a fact. Thank you.
I'm Leben Eilers. I live on Wood Lane in Acton. I just wanted to start with expressing empathy for folks who are concerned about the safety of women in bathrooms. I certainly am also very much in favor of having women have safe places to be. I just want you guys to understand what it's like to have a child who has a suicide rate that's 10 times what other children have because they're transgender, and what it's like to try to go to the mall or to take a road trip or anything where you need to go to a bathroom and have your child hold it until you think they're going to pee on their seat. It's an incredibly terrifying experience to be like that. So I would just urge you to, I understand it's a balance, like many things in law, but we have a case where there's 0 evidence in 18 states that have passed laws like this that it's ever increased any risk to women. And on the other hand, we have a ton of evidence to suggest that children will die if we don't validate who they are inside. And it's not that hard a decision when you weigh it like that. Thank you.
My name is Tin Jay again, 2 Bramble Way. What I'm trying to say here is this. When things go extreme, typically there is a risk, right? So what we really, like myself, I have so many friends that is different from me. And so I have no trouble supporting especially vulnerable communities, for sure. And I think, currently I think Acton-Boxborough have done good job here, right? And I think we have existing policy, and by the way, we have existing laws, right? So we have, I think the school is more like executing this law and make it better, right? So I think we should focus on that instead of oh, prior to the election, let's swing the vote, right? I'm not saying swing which way, but it just, why we are doing so much political things I hear, instead of just, okay, let's wait for the vote, right? And then when there is a certainty and we have a goal, okay, now the vote is this, let's react on that. I understand prevention is always good. We already done the prevention, right? We have a policy, unless somebody say, oh, we have an incident, that the current policy don't work. If that's the case, then I strongly encourage the school committee to take on that and be more focused instead of just generally swing the vote, especially one couple of days prior to the election. I don't think that feed into the ethic I was talking about. This is conflict of interest. Come on, let's follow the law. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lisa Pearson, and I just, Allie asked me to speak on behalf of Acton Cares, just to register their disappointment that there's a great discussion about question 3, which is wonderful, but feeling that there should have been the same discussion given to question 1, and just wondering if, people's personal views were getting in the way of some of the stuff on question 1. And I guess what I heard also was you're supposed to have an understanding of the law, and as a citizen and voting, we all understand what these questions are about, and maybe you don't have enough time to do the research that you wanted to for tonight. But as a school committee member, when you see that pot shops is on the ballot, that you should be thinking about that in the context of our schools. So we just want to, Allie wanted me to speak on behalf of Acton Cares. There's a lot of people in the Chinese community
So
who
we're
care
just-
about this.
I'm going to just stop you. I'm sorry. We need to restrict comments to what the agenda item, the agenda item that we're on. But
okay,
thank you.
That's fine.
Is there anyone else speaking on question 3?
I just want to make a last question, make a last comment. Question 3 and the question 1, in essence, it's the same.
But limit your comments to question 3, please.
This is also it's about the question 3. When we think about the question 3, we want to protect the most vulnerable. Then question 1 is to protect the most vulnerable. And if any student's life got shattered because of marijuana business coming into the
So
town,
thank you so
we
much.
know
I'm going
who is
to
responsible.
have you end your comments. Thank you. Is there anyone speaking on question 3? Okay.
Question number 3, because there's some parent they left because they have been waiting too long. So, excuse me, they've been waiting too long, they left. And they asked me to please bring it up to say, because of the so late, so first of all, a number of the residents, they could not join because very late they received a note. They cannot arrange their child care, they come to this meeting. And number 2, they try to come and also stay so late, they have to go back to take care of the kid. So just a number of the participants, they try to participate, but they could not. I just want to share this point. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to, I have to say that we have an opportunity here to stand up to protect the dignity of the transgender community. We have a track record here in the district of protecting the rights of the transgender community. I need to get a sense, and I'd like to do this rather quickly, if we can proceed to a vote.
Yes.
Yes? Okay, just like nods and...
Yes.
I really think proceeding to a vote just affirms what we have already stated clearly as a district.
And I'd like to make a motion on the table that we overwhelmingly support yes on question 3.
Okay. So am I supposed to take comment now? Or no, you already did that. Yes. More discussion. Okay. Okay, Adam?
I'm glad that we're taking this to a vote, but I also do want to recognize those who are in our community who we may make feel uncomfortable by putting our opinion out publicly. And I think that while it's important for us to take a stand, we also need to understand that there are other members of our community who aren't comfortable with this current ballot question.
Thank you. Maya?
I appreciate you acknowledging that. I think that's important to say. Thanks.
Mary?
I just want to say, I actually think we're modeling well how to have difficult conversations, and we need to have them as a community, because otherwise we're not going to move forward. And so it is difficult, but we need to do it. And so I appreciate the conversation we've had here on both questions and the respect that's gone on across the table.
And Paul?
And, you know, we are elected officials, so we are inherently political. We've stood on a number of issues, and I was willing to stand on those issues and make a statement, and I'm willing to stand and make a statement on this issue as well.
Angie, did you want to say something?
Yes, I do want to say something. I think back to my main point is I don't think there is enough education to understand the both sides, to understand the bill, but I do understand that why this is important, and I also agree that the LGBTQ, that I 100% agree, like I said, and I want to point out this is for education. The reason that are people who are concerned about the bill, because there was an amendment that was trying to exclude sex offender level 2 and level 3 out of the bill, but it was denied. So which means this bill does that grant the legal access for them to go there.
There are laws against assault against anyone anywhere. This does not allow assault anywhere.
So it's okay, yeah. So the information that, so we have different education, different information. So my point is, to me, this is we are taking a different stand on the kind of political thing, and we're trying to push one and not the other. I don't feel that's correct.
Okay. I just want to say in closing, did you want to just jump in for a second before
I guess I just want to appeal to you, Angie, and hope that you did feel heard tonight and respected, and just to understand the difference between the first issue we're discussing and this issue, which is already just an affirmation of statements we've already made on behalf of our students, a stance we've already taken to protect our students and to ensure equity in our district. So, but at the same time, I hope you don't feel that there was disrespect or animosity, and
yeah, so I just want to piggyback on that and say that it takes a lot of courage to sit at this table and be honest about your opinions and have difficult conversations. I agree that we have modeled what is possible when we are respectful of one another, and I do appreciate your courage tonight in stating your views, okay? I will ask for a vote. Eileen, sorry, go ahead.
I don't know what to express. I think I would like to say, even we do not agree with each other somehow, I think this meeting is at least to respect each other. I like that. However, I do feel we treat the first issue and second issue differently. It's really, to me, it's all political issues. It's all on the ballot. We need to vote by ourselves. And I feel very uncomfortable to speak out, to vote here.
And I will just echo that, what I said before, that I don't think I would be pushing this hard if we didn't have the policies in place that we have, protecting the rights of this community. So with that, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Did you get that?
8, 1, and 1. We have one member not here tonight.
One member is not here, yeah. Okay, motion passes. Okay, thank you all for coming. You're invited to stay, certainly, but we will move on.
Can I make a suggestion that break to allow people to stand up if they need to,
Yep.
allow audience members to
Okay,
leave?
yep.
Yeah.
So we will take a 2-minute recess. Okay, it is almost 10 minutes after 10, and we are still needing to move through some items in the agenda. I am actually going to shorten the agenda because of the hour. We will be considering item 13. Is item 14 something we can move? The consent agenda? Yeah?
Oh, no, we should do that. We need to do that.
We do, okay, okay. So we have 2 items left, and then I'm going to just call it a night after that. So item 13 is 13.1 requires us, I'm asking you to please select a delegate who will attend the annual business meeting at the MASC conference coming up next week.
You had mentioned in the materials that 6 people are going. Can you tell us who
Yes,
they are
yeah.
so we can pick our favorites? No, I'm just totally kidding.
Okay, so it's my understanding that, that Michael Bowe is attending, that Angie is attending, and Ginny. I will be in attendance, Tessa will be in attendance, and Amy Krishnamurthy will be in attendance. So those are the 6. So we need to select a delegate, and oh, go ahead. Third, that is a new one. So I was actually going to suggest that either Ginny do it and one of the newer members do it, but we do need an alternate. So I will accept your nomination there. So I don't think we actually need to vote this. It's just a selection. Yeah. So I guess me. Yes, just yes. Okay. Now yeah. Just vote it? Okay. Okay.
I move that Diane be designated the delegate for our committee.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, thank you.
And can I move that Ginny be our alternate since she's our legislative person?
Okay.
What time is that meeting? Do you know exactly? Is it, okay, I tried to look at the agenda today, which Beth kindly sent to me. Does anyone know?
I want to say it's at 12:15 on Friday.
Okay, so I have a conflict Friday afternoon, so I'm not going to be able to. I'm going to be there for not the whole thing beginning to end, but a little bit late on the first day. I'm going to have to skate at lunchtime on Friday, so I apologize for that.
Okay.
I have to work.
Angie, are you interested in being an alternate for, so if I can't fulfill my duties as delegate at the annual business meeting at the MASC conference, would you be willing to take my place?
Potentially vote. Would you represent our position on these that we're going to vote? Is that?
Yes, but
yeah.
I'm going to, we'll get to that in a second. No. So, no, we're just selecting an alternate, and I'm wondering if you want to take on that role, Angie, or we'd rather not. Okay. Is there someone else who's going? Who would
I'll
like
move that Tessa McKinley be the alternate for the representative.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, Tessa. Okay, item 13.2. So there are 9 proposed resolutions. Now, we have 2 choices here. We could just kind of allow the delegate to make the choice of whether to vote or not on these resolutions, or we can very quickly go through the resolutions and reach consensus so that we can let the delegate know the position that we hold. So let me just read them off and, Oh, Adam.
Might I suggest we treat this similar to a consent agenda where you read them off, and if anybody is opposed to any of them, they say hold, and then we can vote on the remaining that have not been held.
Okay. Great idea. Okay. So Resolution 1 is about rejecting the arming of educators. Okay. Resolution 2. Okay. Resolution 3, elimination of the Federal Department of Education. Resolution 4, regional school transportation. Resolution 5, regarding reporting and accountability standards. Resolution 6, regarding, oh, hold, okay. Hold on, 6? Hold on, 6. 5 was reporting and accountability standards. I heard nothing. Okay, hold on, 6. Resolution 7 on gender identity inclusive athletic participation policy. No holds on that. Resolution 8 relative to sports wagering. And Resolution 9 relative to access to information for parents and students who are clients of special education. Okay.
So I'll move that the Acton-Boxborough Regional School Committee support resolutions 1, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. We'll move on to Resolution 2. So do we need a motion on the floor first?
I have no idea.
Yeah? Okay.
So I was reading through these, and I'm okay with the spirit of all of these. It's just that when I got to Resolution 2, under the now be it resolved, the sentence reads, these are resolutions developed by, no, wait, I'm sorry. I don't have it in front of me. Where's the Resolution 2?
This is 2, yeah.
Now be it resolved, the that mask opposed legislation, there it is, third paragraph down, or unlegislated regulations that would attempt to undermine the right of any city, town, or regional district to have imposed upon it a mandate to restructure, expand, regionalize, or dissolve its school district without its consent. I lost the meaning of that.
So apparently there have been pressures by DESE to get towns to regionalize.
Yeah.
And to then close a school district. And so this is saying that they oppose that pressure through legislation or through regulation.
Okay, with that interpretation, I'm willing to support it.
Okay.
And
All
this,
right.
oh, I'm sorry.
Anything else?
The next had to do with Resolution 6. Same idea.
Move to
So,
support.
did you have something to say on 2?
Yes, I
Okay.
did. I just wanted to say that on 2, this is not an issue that I've ever thought about or read about. And so for me, I would expect that there would be a lot more information and discussion and exchange of points of view. And therefore, I would be comfortable allowing whoever our delegate is who is, going to sit in to listen to all of those points of view. While I appreciate that it seems heavy-handed that the state would ever force a school district to dissolve, I don't really feel like I've received the other side of that. So I'm personally, at this point, agnostic on 2 and willing to, if you hear things that make it seem to you that there are compelling reasons to vote against this, I would be comfortable with that.
Okay. Yes, and that goes without saying. If if I'm persuaded by arguments, I can vote.
Except for
yeah.
number 1.
Yep.
I just want to say, being integrally involved in the full regionalization, so in regionalizing the elementary schools, I felt that process required the town buy-in and all the work that happens around that. And so for the state to come in and require it, I just think that it would set 2 communities or more communities up for a really difficult region. So for that reason, I do really support this. I will say that because they talk about some funding and looking at the formula, it puts us at risk, because unless they put more money in the bucket, any change in the foundation formula is likely to hurt Acton-Boxborough being a more privileged community. That said, I still felt like I could support this. Yeah.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? So the last one is on hold was Resolution 6 regarding reproductive. So do you want to speak to that, Paul?
Yeah, hang on. It's when I actually read the sentence, first paragraph in the explanation, there exists a debate over the appropriate content of sexual and reproductive health information usage that may be limited only for purposes of education. To those which teach actual learning. At the time I was reading it, it was not really, it was late at night. Going on, again, with the spirit of it, if I can't buy into the words, I'll buy into the spirit.
So I'll move the Acton Boxborough sorry.
Actually don't know the content for each of this, so I don't feel comfortable because by looking at it, seems very, one is very restricted, one is educational, but I remember I saw some of the comprehensive one, and I don't feel 100% comfortable with that one either. So my question is, what is our parents in terms of what options does parents has in terms of what do they want their kids to have the education on? I don't know whether parents be able to optionally taking some purview because for whatever reason it is, for family, whatever reason it is, if they don't feel comfortable, what's the option the parents has? Either one of this.
Excuse me, Deb, do you mind talking to that for 1 second? Just maybe parental opt-out of sex education.
Sure. For human growth and development sex education, parents have the right to opt out, and that is in the state, that's in our regulations, and so we do that for all. We inform parents, and parents have the right to opt out for that specific curricular piece in that unit. And they can always preview the materials, are all online, absolutely. It's sent in advance before, in the letter that's sent to parents, there are links directly to the curriculum and the materials that are used, so parents can preview all of those materials ahead of time.
So that includes from K to 12?
Well, we only teach it in specific grades. So in 5th and 6th grade, that's done.
Okay.
And then at the high school, there are some speakers who come in, and those parents, again, have the right to opt their children out of hearing those
Do we
speakers.
still send out, I remember that when the kids in elementary, they receive a notification. What about the junior high? They still got notification?
So the junior high, right now, we don't teach human
you
growth
don't
and development.
teach?
No, there
So
aren't any
this
lessons.
curriculum will be only for elementary?
So right now, you should know that the health curriculum frameworks are being revised by the state, and we don't have them yet. So currently, right now, under the state's framework, we are teaching at 5th and 6th grade, and again at 9th grade. So those are the places where parents have notification.
Okay,
Once we
so-
have the revision of the health frameworks, we'll have to see what the state is asking us to do.
Okay.
Sorry. It says that this just calls upon the U.S. Department of Education to stop their support of abstinence-only education. That's what this is calling for. It doesn't, it's not, I mean, it's not really talking about specific curriculum other than evidence-based. So that piece of it doesn't really come into it because it doesn't, it's not that specific.
Any other comments? Okay, and do I hear a motion?
To support, second, yeah.
All in favor? Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Okay, thank you very much. That's very helpful. Our last item for tonight will be also a consent agenda, item 14. There are 2 items on this consent agenda. One is the recommendation to accept FY19 gifts from Acton Elementary Schools, PTOs, PTSOs, to the Acton-Boxborough Regional School District. Actually, you're on for this one.
So this is a standing agenda item annually. Marie, do you have any other comments on that? Actually, there's a
So
second
this is a
item in the
consent
consent.
agenda, so that was just number 1. Okay. You may. Okay. The second item is a recommendation to approve a field trip to Quebec for the Nordic ski team. Oh, go ahead.
That's also a recurring trip that's been approved previously.
No, we're holding the first one, so go ahead and vote on this. Okay. Yes, so item 14.1 was a hold, and so there's a motion on the floor for 14.2 to approve. Was there a second on that? Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Let's go back to 14.1. Tessa?
I understand that the PTOs need to pay for positions that already exist in their schools, but I just want to say that I don't think the PTO should be paying for any sort of personnel. And we've given a tremendous amount of money to the schools to support assistants in the classrooms, and from what I read, at least 2 of our schools are able to do that entirely with the budget that we gave them, and I don't think that they should be paying for those things. I don't think that the PTO should have that burden put on them. And I just want to make it clear, because the question was answered for me, that the district does provide full-time media assistants in each of the schools, plus a librarian at Blanchard. So those that are paying for media assistants are paying for additional coverage. So that's all I need to say.
Any other comments on that?
I'll say I agree.
I'm just saying that I'm not going to vote positively on that, because even though I appreciate that the PTOs have given those gifts, I disagree wholeheartedly with what they're paying for.
I would just add, it creates inequities in our schools. You know, I think if they need the staffing, then they need to argue for that through the budget process. And the other thing is, I think it's challenging to take money from the parent-teacher organizations and rely on that in our budget, because what if it's not there one year? That's a challenge for our budget. So I think we should be budgeting staff positions appropriately.
Okay. Anyone else? Eileen?
I don't want to make this meeting even later, but however, I think we talked about that before, right? And right now, from Community Ed, that their program will give the assistant teacher to all the elementary school. I think that will fund that. But how do you know this is for the assistant teacher teaching funds? I'm
It
curious.
states it in their letters, what they're using the funds for, or what they're donating the funds for, sorry. In each letter from each elementary school, it states clearly what they'll be using the fund, what they're donating the funds to cover.
So what if they have their extra help? Sometimes it's like math help, sometimes English language help. Maybe it's just extra than other schools. I don't know.
I was just registering my displeasure. It's a gift that they're giving us. So I was just registering my beliefs about that, what they said that they were using the funds for. Does not say they're using it for EL help.
Okay, Mary.
All right. And I just want to say, I am very appreciative of the gift, and I do understand that it's a process to change this in the district. So I can support this gift, but I also want to acknowledge and continue the conversation about how we fund staff, critical staff in our district.
Paul?
I just want to point out that I thought we had if not, I forget what the document we called was, a memorandum of understanding, but I thought the principals all got together with senior leadership to come up with something that was equitable, and I just think that this is just part of that. But so I'm a little surprised that we're still talking about inequity, because I thought we had addressed it more than once.
Marie, do you mind just very, very briefly speaking to that? Because you have the history on that, and also maybe just very briefly talk about the implication of a no vote. if this was not approved?
Yep, so the big change last year was around the before and after school programs and bringing them all together. You heard about it earlier tonight. That did provide 12 hours of assistant support for every classroom, grades 1 through 6. Kindergarten already has full-time. There are still differences in schools as it relates to PTO donations, and when we went through the whole process to talk about the before and after school, it was agreed to sort of not talk about the PTO at the same time. It was already a big change as it relates to the before and after school. We're still working our way through that. And, you know, the feedback is taken, and the vote tonight is to accept the money from the PTOs that have already raised the money under the guidelines of the school committee and the school district as they stand.
I'm just going to add really briefly that these are non-certified teachers, and they are hugely impactful on the culture of a school and supporting the philosophy of the different schools. So this is a really complicated issue, and I just wanted to throw that out there. But thank you, Tessa, for your...
Diane, I'm sorry, can I add one more thing? I think part of what Peter was getting at was if the committee were to vote no on accepting these gifts, we'd be going back to the PTOs and telling them no thank you for the money that they raised in the course of all of last year.
And would it have a staffing implication this year?
Yes. So, yes.
Maya.
I want to say something with like a great deal of respect for people's time that they put into this to prepare. But I think if there are members on this committee that have been members on the committee for a year or 2 years or maybe 3, and they still don't understand this PTO funds issue, it's time to get on board and understand it. And with all due respect, like, it seems like some people didn't read this part of the packet. And Eileen, I can't help but ask you, like, are you confused about it? Like, it's time to understand a little bit about this topic as a member that's been here for quite a while. And if you're not clear, I think somebody ought to sit down and explain to some of our newer members.
So, Maya, I'm just going to respectfully interrupt and ask people to not call out other people in a public venue. And you know, we do have a mentorship system here, and we also know, every one of us knows that we can't always get to the whole packet, and this was like, you know, at the very end. So let's move to a vote, if we can, please.
Let me explain, Maya. I did not read this particular line, but what I wanted to agree with Tessa and Mary, because I was the one really with Marie engaged. We're talking about the funds. So that's why I was like really confused to say, why do we need to do this again? That's why. So thank you for, you know, asking that.
Okay, is there a motion on the floor? Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? Abstentions? Good night, and thank you for your patience. Oh, move to adjourn. Oh, yes. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Good night.